Chapter 2331. But no matter what the truth was, with Yu Linglong's death, everything dissipated. In front of them, there was only one demon-slaying warrior who had fallen because of slaying demons. On the other hand, it also meant that the real demon-slaying war had been ignited and erupted. Do it! Mo Tianji shouted and gave the order decisively. In an instant, a strong wind blew. Zi Xieching, Brother Tiger, Tribulation's godly soul, Chu Le, Mo Lei and the rest all retreated. Only Chu Yang and Tribulation were left. Mo Qingwu stood half a shoulder behind Chu Yang. She was the only woman who had stayed behind. She stood there quietly. Forcing out Yuan Tianjie's true body was only the first goal of the established strategy. It was only the beginning, and the real highlight was yet to come. After all, killing Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun in front of everyone and killing a heavenly demon were two completely different things. If he killed the celestial emperor of a world, no matter what the reason, motive, or original intention was, he would still face endless trouble and investigation. Even if Mo Yun Tian's local strength couldn't do anything to them, then, the combined revenge from Die's level was enough to make them completely scared out of their wits. Since it was someone who could kill Yuan Tianjie, then it was possible for him to kill them too. Under such thinking, Chu Yang and the rest definitely couldn't coexist with Die's descendants, unless one side was completely dead. But now that Yuan Tianjie had revealed his heavenly demon true body, the fact that he was a heavenly demon was already known by many people. To Mo Tianji and the rest, this was too advantageous. It meant that they didn't need to have any scruples anymore. The name of this battle had already changed from the destruction of a heavenly emperor to a demon-slaying event, to a heroic feat. If there were still people who wanted to make use of this matter to target Chu Yang and the rest, there was no need for Chu Yang and the rest to fight back. They would probably have been eliminated by the crowd first. However, at this point, the situation of the battle was very different from before. Yuan Tianming's real body had appeared, so he naturally did not have any scruples in doing things. Moreover, his battle strength had greatly recovered, so he was bound to be more difficult to deal with than before. Ordinary human wave tactics were hardly effective against him, and might even have a negative impact. Therefore, everyone except Chu Yang and Tribulation retreated, leaving only Chu Yang and the others to encircle and annihilate the flying demon. Zi Xieching and the rest knew that Chu Yang, Mo Qingwu, Mo Tianji and the rest were a natural and perfect formation that did not need to be deliberately set up. If they forced themselves to stay here, not only would they not be of help, they would also affect the normal operation of the formation. Therefore, Zi Xieching and the rest retreated and started a massacre on the heavenly fiend horde that had surged out again. As much as possible, they left empty space for Chu Yang and the others to use for the decisive battle. They must not allow anyone to interfere with this battle, and they must prevent anyone from providing assistance to Yuan Tianjie. In mid-air, Mu Kanglan and Yi Luoyu were almost at the end of their battle. Yi Luoyu, who was gradually losing her strength, also finally revealed her true form as a heavenly fiend. If not, it would be difficult for her to deal with Mu Kanglan's desperate attacks. Below, the four guards, Zi Xieching, Mo Lei, Brother Hu, Chu Le and the rest attacked the heavenly fiends that had emerged from Yuan Tianming's boundary. These people vaguely formed a second encirclement with Tribulation as the core. Other than preventing the heavenly fiend horde from assisting Yuan Tianming, they also had the intention of stopping Yuan Tianming from escaping after he broke through Tribulation's encirclement. Tribulation's spirit had just taken a direct hit from Yuan Tianming's explosion and almost lost the ability to fight again. If not for his special physique, his primordial body would have long collapsed and turned into ashes. However, he could only turn into a cloud of grey smoke now, hovering above the battlefield. All the soul energy and spirit bodies of the dead heavenly fiend horde were all absorbed by him. While completely eliminating future troubles, he was also recovering from his injuries and strengthening himself at the same time. In the past, it was only the heavenly fiends who absorbed the souls of the human race. Now that the tables had turned, it was the other party who absorbed the soul energy that dissipated after his death. Tribulation's spirit's injuries were gradually getting better, but when it came to taking the initiative to attack, he was still unable to do so. The generals under Yu Kai's command were all stunned when they saw Yu Kai's tragic death and saw so many heavenly fiends suddenly appearing. Suddenly, someone shouted, "What are you waiting for? Still the undying heavenly fiend. Everyone, charge over." Everyone shouted and surrounded them from all directions. Even the experts on Mu Kang Lan's side, together with the soldiers on Yu Kai's side, formed a third encirclement intentionally or unintentionally. The crowd turned into a huge iron bucket-like encirclement, surrounding all the heavenly fiends inside. No matter how many personal grudges and grievances they had before, when facing the heavenly fiends, everyone cast aside their former grudges and stood together against a common enemy. In battle, even if they met their old rivals who they had fought to the death with before, at most they would just laugh awkwardly and say a few harsh words. However, they would still cooperate if they needed to cooperate. No one would indulge the heavenly fiends because of personal grudges. Wang Laosan, you better fucking remember this. Today, I saved your life, and there will be a day when I will save your life. Heavens! Damn it! Fuck, didn't you just happen to save my life? I will definitely save your life. After this, I will still fight with you tomorrow. I will not rest until you die. Fuck, do you think I will be afraid of you? Qin Wu, you bastard, I will settle the score with you tomorrow for killing my nephew. You want to settle the score with me today? I don't have the time. Let's kill the heavenly fiends first. As for our matters, we will talk about it later. Fuck, how can we be afraid of revenge when we are still alive? Let's make a deal. The second day after we kill all the heavenly fiends will be the time to settle our grudges. Wang you treacherous bastard who doesn't get up early if there are no benefits. You actually know how to save people today. Fuck off, so many heavenly fiends won't be able to shut your stinky mouth. If you have the guts, just you wait. Let's see if I don't set up a trap to kill you one day. The two armies almost merged into each other in an extremely short period of time. There was no grudge between them at all. We don't care about the battle in the sky, but none of these heavenly fiends on the ground can escape. This was the common understanding of everyone. Yuan Tianjie looked at the battlefield below with an extremely complicated gaze. He watched as his heavenly fiend subordinates slowly dwindled and disappeared like bubbles in the sea. He watched with his own eyes as his capable subordinates, who were also saints, were instantly drowned by a large group of experts after revealing their heavenly fiends' true forms. Some people directly used their own bodies as weapons. They gave up on their skillful martial arts moves and used the most barbaric and unskillful method to hold the heavenly fiends tightly. However, they didn't self-destruct because they had more people on their side. If they self-destructed, not only would they hurt the enemy, they would also hurt themselves. Instead, they laughed wildly and allowed their comrades to beat themselves and the immobile heavenly fiends into minced meat. The first Tribulation Sword Master had already set up the battle formation of the Sword Master of the world. He kept accumulating his own strength, preparing for a thunderous attack. The time to kill with one strike had arrived. Mo Tianji carefully looked at Yuan Tianjie's expression and said indifferently, "Lord Flying Demon, do you see it? This is the Heavenly Imperial Court. You want to obtain it for all eternity, but it is a place that you are destined to never be able to obtain. It doesn't matter how many grudges we have against each other, none of us will cower in the face of celestial demons and devils like you. None of us will remember any personal grudges." Chapter 2332. Whether I'm qualified or not, it's not up to you to say. Chu Yang looked at his sword and said lightly, "You'll know that you're wrong later. It's not scary to not have foresight, but it's scary to lack self-awareness." Yuan Tianjie nodded fiercely. Good, good, good. Let's see who doesn't have self-awareness. The way he looked at Chu Yang became more and more ferocious. Almost all of his painstaking efforts had been destroyed because of Chu Yang alone. So, his hatred for Chu Yang was extremely deep. If Chu Yang didn't kill Yuan Shitu that day, why would Yuan Tianjie send people to kill him? If he didn't send people to kill him, why would Meng Wuya betray him? If he didn't do that, why would the conflict between Mu Kanglan and Yu Kai become so intense? If he didn't do that, why would the three kings go to kill Chu Yang and Meng Wuya? And if it weren't for these things, why would his identity as a heavenly demon be exposed after he successfully hid it for 1,000,000 years? Thinking of this, Yuan Tianji suddenly realized that the reason why his 1,000,000-year hibernation, the 1,000,000-year painstaking effort of the Heavenly Devil clan, was exposed was entirely because of Chu Yang alone. This guy was the fuse that ran through the entire situation. Chu Yang, if this king were to let you die a quick and painless death, it would be letting down your self-awareness. Yuan Tianjie put his hands behind his back and glared at Chu Yang. Chu Yang nodded slowly. Same here. Yuan Tianjie screamed without warning. The 12 fleshy wings on his back suddenly spread open, and he flew into the air. As fast as lightning, he almost turned into a green light. His target was Chu Yang. Move. Mo Tianji ordered. Jiyu Duxing's sword, Dong Wushong's saber, Xie Danqiong's viburnum flower, Mo Qingwu's gentle dance stream, Ao Xieyun's golden dragon divine technique, Rui Biyu Tong's golden phoenix, Jimo and Luo Kudiai's swords, and Mo Tianji's palms all pushed out at the same time. The one shining with sharp sword light was Chu Yang's calamity sword. The 10 of them completely turned into an indestructible sharp all at this moment. They attacked Yuan Tianjie head-on. Yuan Tianjie's roar shook the sky. He didn't dodge at all. His 2 hands turned into black smoke and chopped down fiercely. Yuan Tianji actually wanted to use his heavily injured body to take on the power of tribulation head-on. This action showed Yuan Tianming's determination to fight to the death. To be honest, Yuan Tianjie's action was somewhat out of Mo Tianji's expectations. In Mo Tianji's estimation, Yuan Tianjie would most likely use the method of attacking tribulation separately, avoiding the strong and attacking the weak. If that was the case, Rui Butong, Ji Mo, and Luo Kedi, who were relatively weaker, and Mo Qingwu, who was a woman, would most likely become Yuan Tianjie's primary targets. But now, Yuan Tianjie actually chose to attack head-on. This was undoubtedly beyond Mo Tianji's expectations. However, this was even better. This was because the current situation was what Mo Tianji wanted to see after all his plans, schemes, arrangements, and attack. In fact, Chu Yang's previous series of provocative words, even using himself as bait to lure Yuan Tianming into attacking him, was all for the sake of complementing Mo Tianji's plan. He didn't know if it was because a certain king of hell's poisonous tongue was too incisive that he actually attracted Yuan Tianming's full attention. The reason why such a tactic was formulated was because if Yuan Tianjie really wanted to escape, with his tyrannical cultivation, even if tens of millions of soldiers gathered here, they definitely wouldn't be able to stop him. But as long as he was determined to fight to the death, then everything would be easy to deal with. Forcing Yuan Tianjie to the point where he had no choice but to personally lead the army before he recovered from his injuries was the most praiseworthy thing that Mo Tianji thought Xie Danqiong had done. Mo Tianji thought that this was a good foundation, and it was a great foundation that was bestowed by the heavens. After that, he continued to attack and destroy, so that Yuan Tianjie's injuries would never have the chance to recover. This continued all the way. Finally, there was the thunderous attack that made things worse for the 4 great guards. What Mo Tianji didn't expect the most was that Yuan Tianjie was actually willing to get injured again for Yu Kai. This could be considered a completely unexpected gain. After that, Mo Tianji's words were equivalent to forcing Yuan Tianjie into a dead end. This was a common mentality that belonged to all living creatures. Whether the target was a heavenly demon or a human, it was the same. No matter whether Yuan Tianjie was a heavenly demon or not, no matter whether he had ulterior motives, he had always worked hard in Mo Yun Tian for millions of years. Seeing the people that he had governed for millions of years finally turn against him, this feeling was always unpleasant. Yu Kai was willing to be loyal to Yuan Tianjie, even to death, but she wasn't willing to be loyal to Yuan Tianjie, who had revealed his heavenly demon true body. She didn't hesitate to fight with her life. In the blink of an eye, the soldiers who had obeyed his orders had all turned against him. This was a feeling of being betrayed by his own people. Just because she was a heavenly demon? Mo Tianji's words were like knives, riddling Yuan Tianjie's heart with holes step by step. And at such a crucial moment, Chu Yang, the main culprit, jumped out again. A series of more deliberate and vicious words completely broke through Yuan Tianjie's last psychological defense. This allowed the old and new hatred to completely rush into Yuan Tianjie's heart and take root. Mo Tianjie's strategy could be said to be completely successful. However, although he left Yuan Tianjie behind, it also brought great danger to himself and the others. Although the 4 great guards still had a certain amount of fighting power, they were all seriously injured without exception. Moreover, even if they weren't injured, rashly entering the core of the battle would also disrupt and destroy the overall power of tribulation. This battle was destined to end with tribulation. Yuan Tianjie didn't back down at all. With the momentum of a thunderbolt, he came crashing down. The tip of Chu Yang's sword also met it at that moment. Boom! The combined power of 10 people collided head-on with Yuan Tianjie's fists. 2 equally ferocious and tyrannical forces collided with each other without any tricks and without any deviation. Yuan Tianjie let out a muffled snort and staggered backward. Every step he took out, a huge pit would appear on the ground 1,000 feet below. He retreated 17 steps before he regained his balance. His ferocious eyes stared straight ahead. Puff, puff, puff. On tribulation's side, 10 people's bodies were thrown up at the same time. All of them spat out blood and flew out in 10 different directions. However, their combined auras were still closely connected and didn't separate at all. Chu Yang and Mo Tianjie still exchanged glances at the critical moment. Both of them felt a sense of shock in each other's eyes, as well as a sense of relief. They were shocked because although Yuan Tianjie was already seriously injured to such an extent, he actually still had the strength to fight head-on with tribulation and use his increased strength to force him back. As for relief, it was because after all, he still hadn't really broken through the combined forces of his brothers. In this way, he had more confidence in himself. After retreating, Chu Yang didn't wait for his momentum to dissipate. He already somersaulted in the air and rushed back like lightning. As he somersaulted, Mo Qingwu also somersaulted lightly and rushed back with Chu Yang almost at the same time. At this moment, it was as if she didn't have the ability to make her own decisions at all. She just moved according to Chu Yang's movements. At this moment, other than using her own heavenly dance divine technique, all her cultivation, including her spirit, was integrated into Chu Yang's cultivation. In life and death, they would never leave each other. In this life, although the two of them had never engaged in any kind of dual cultivation between a man and a woman, at this moment, when their hearts and minds were in sync, what they displayed was the highest level of dual cultivation that very few people could achieve. In life and death, they would always be one heart. Black clothes like ink, red clothes like clouds. Chu Yang and Mo Qingwu became one and chased after them at high speed. Yuan Tianjie's eyes revealed a trace of sincere viciousness. He suddenly roared, ice sealing heaven and earth. The rich heavenly demonic energy that flowed out from his body suddenly turned into a bone-piercing cold wind. In just a moment, the whole world seemed to be completely frozen by this bone-piercing cold wind. As far as the eye could see, a layer of white frost solidified on the ground in an instant. Then, it transformed into a field of ice. In the next moment, the whole ground suddenly cracked open. On the ground, there were many people who unknowingly got close to the battle. Whether they were heavenly demons or humans, their whole bodies were frozen at the same time. Then, they shattered with a crash. Even their flesh didn't fall, leaving only hard particles on the ground. It actually completely froze the human body from the inside out, turning them into broken glass. This was already the most extreme cold between heaven and earth. This was because almost every single one of the people who had died in this cold was an expert. But in the face of such bitter cold, they didn't even have the slightest bit of resistance. No one knew who was the first to shout, "It's dangerous here, run quickly." Everyone who got close to this circle ran out quickly. They didn't even dare to fly. Because even the air and water vapor in the air had already condensed because of it. Flying forward and coming into contact with it was practically like flying over a mountain of knives. Most likely, before they could fly out, they would turn into eerie white bones. On the ground, countless huge cracks continued to spread outwards, and new cracks kept appearing. Such a scene was really beyond the knowledge of everyone present. Chu Yang and Mo Qingwu's rapidly flying bodies were suddenly frozen in midair. They didn't move at all. Yuan Tianjie retracted his hand and walked forward step by step. He said with a hideous smile, "In my life, what I hate the most is the so-called loving couple. What I hate the most is the bullshit true love in the human world. Every time I see it, I always have an urge to destroy it, and you two are exactly what I hate the most." Chapter 23:33. Destroying all the beautiful things in the world, filling my eyes and ears with the human world. Desolation, that is my greatest enjoyment. Chu Yang, look at this little girl's deep affection for you. If this beauty of yours were to die, wouldn't you be very happy? Ha ha ha. I'll let you have a good time first. Yuan Tianjie laughed sinisterly. With a flip of his wrist, a long sword as black as ink, still emitting demonic aura, suddenly appeared. With a swing of the sword, it flew towards Chu Yang. The tip of the sword was pointed at Mo Qingwu's neck, which was already sealed in ice. The black long sword flashed and arrived. The Tribulation brothers were frozen in mid-air. It seemed that they were already powerless against this sword. Chu Yang looked coldly at Yuan Tianjie, who was rushing towards him. His body, which had already seemed to be frozen, actually moved strangely. He said lightly, "You want to kill all the people I care about the most. You don't have the qualifications to do so." With a long howl, the Calamity sword instantly emitted tens of thousands of rays of light. With a puff, Yuan Tianjie's ink-colored sword was struck down and turned into a cloud of smoke. At the same time, all the ice power that filled the space was completely disintegrated. The next moment, a cold light rushed straight towards Yuan Tianjie. Yuan Tianjie hurriedly dodged, and a piece of his sleeve, together with a piece of flesh, was cut off from his body. But he didn't seem to feel it. He just stared at Chu Yang in disbelief. "How can this be? I only managed to activate the icebound heaven and earth with the Heavenly Emperor's providence and the full strength of my demonic soul. As long as it's powerful enough, it can seal heaven and earth. You're just a mere high-level saint. How can you not be affected by my Heavenly Emperor's icebound heaven and earth, and even counterattack immediately? I'll answer this question for you." A cold voice said mockingly, "Because your icebound heaven and earth is just a joke in front of us. It's just child's play." With this sentence, the originally motionless Jiyu Duxing had already flown rapidly to the sky above Yuan Tianjie. The black dragon sword in his hand turned into a condensed cold light, stabbing straight down. "Why are all of you not affected? This is impossible." Yuan Tianming was furious. He accurately punched the tip of Jiyu Duxing's sword. While Jiyu Duxing spat out blood and retreated, on the other side, Dong Wushang had already leaped to the top of Yuan Tianming's head and ruthlessly chopped down with his saber. Dong Wushang didn't say a single word, but this saber strike was extremely domineering. Its might was even above Jiyu Duxing's sword strike earlier. At practically the exact same moment, Jimo, Luo Kudi, and the others swarmed over and attacked Yuan Tianming. Xie Danxiong's viburnum flower finally bloomed on Yuan Tianjie's back, and a cloud of black blood flew up. Mo Tianji finally heaved a sigh of relief. He thought in his heart, "I finally forced out this move." The outcome had been decided. Mo Tianji had already learned about this killing move from Mu Kanglan. Yuan Tianji had a type of martial art that could freeze the heavens and earth in an instant. Once it was used, all enemies would be sealed in ice. They would no longer have the power to fight back and would be slaughtered. Even Die Empress would be affected to a certain extent. However, if it wasn't a critical moment, Yuan Tianming would definitely not use it. Because this move consumed too much energy. When he heard this, Mo Tianji already had a plan. Because only Chu Yang's Calamity Sword could easily get rid of this strange situation. The Calamity Sword was the #1 divine weapon in the world. Whether it was ice or fire, it would not be able to withstand a single blow from the Calamity Sword. No matter what kind of strange martial art it was, as long as the Calamity Sword was present, it would all be dissolved. Mo Tianji had seen this point more than once. And in battle, Chu Yang and the others' cultivations and divine souls were tightly connected, forming a complete body. As long as Chu Yang himself was not affected, it meant that none of the brothers would be affected. And this was the final step of Mo Tianji's demon-slaying plan, and also the most crucial step. Yuan Tianming had already used all his strength to use this killing move, but it did not have any effect. Apart from the psychological blow, his physical condition was bound to be even worse. Yuan Tianjie was confident that his sure-kill attack was easily neutralized by the enemy. Moreover, even when the other party attacked him again, he still didn't understand what was going on. This was a nightmare for Yuan Tianming. It had never happened before. One must know that this move had always been Yuan Tianjie's trump card. He had full confidence that even if it was Xue Leihan, as long as he faced this move head-on, Xue Leihan would also be completely suppressed by him for a certain period of time. Only when nearly half of the frozen heaven and earth's freezing power had dissipated would this restriction gradually disappear. As for those below Junyi whose level, including the super-strong 7-star guards, they would have to wait until at least 70% of the frozen heaven and earth's power had dissipated. Only then would they have a chance to escape from the frozen heaven and earth's frozen state. Chu Yang and the others, whose strength was much weaker than Junyi whose, basically had no chance of escaping by themselves. He had even made up his mind, once I release this move, it will work instantly. I will freeze all these hateful ants in front of me. I will certainly keep my promise and kill this beautiful little girl in red first. Then, I will kill those people next to her one by one. They are Chu Yang's brothers. Just like that. He would only leave Chu Yang alive and would not even harm a single hair on him. Then, he would float away and find a chance to slowly toy with Chu Yang in the future. With his cultivation, he could definitely reach Demon Emperor Heaven silently and crush Chu Yang's heavenly armament pavilion. He would toy with Chu Yang all the way until the last moment and only kill him after his mind had completely collapsed. To Yuan Tianming, this was the happiest and most thorough method of revenge. He believed that this Chu Yang would slowly be toyed to death by him. Only then would he be able to vent the anger that had been pent up in his heart all this time. This was the best punishment for the main culprit. But he had never imagined that the result would be like this. His ultimate move, which was enough to threaten the Eastern sovereign and was enough to restrain everyone under the first Empress Jun, was completely ineffective against these ants in front of him. At this moment, his entire body's cultivation had been depleted, and there wasn't much left. But the other party had actually launched a powerful counterattack at this delicate moment. Wasn't this a little too tragic? Yuan Tianming's heart was extremely miserable, but he also understood that this was a dangerous battle. The other party was about to kill him. If he still thought about such trivial things, he would be courting death. He hurriedly collected his thoughts and focused on resisting the other party's successive killing moves. In just one move, he went from being evenly matched, and even having a slight advantage, to being completely at a disadvantage. Yuan Tianming's cultivation was now less than 100%. He was almost out of energy, but he still mustered all his remaining strength to resist the attacks. Yuan Tianming's million years of battle experience was easy at first. Although he was completely at a disadvantage, he still tried his best to contend. First, he blasted out a palm to shake off the momentum of Chu Yang's tribulation sword, and avoided it by a hair's breadth. Then, he used all his remaining strength to forcefully push away Jiyu Duxing and Dong Wushong, who had the strongest killing power. Chu Yang and the other two people's joint attacks were actually unable to seriously injure Yuan Tianming at this moment. Yuan Tianming barely managed to deal with the attacks of Chu Yang and the other two experts, and his heart relaxed a little. Chu Yang and the other two were the three strongest people on the enemy's side. He barely managed to deal with them, and he would have a chance to recover. Unexpectedly, just as he thought this, an inexplicable pain came rapidly from his body. It was Xiedan Qiong's viburnum flower that had silently bloomed on his body. Yuan Tianming clearly felt that intense physical pain. This was a pain that he had never experienced in tens of thousands of years. Even if he had been injured repeatedly before, it was only mental damage and spiritual damage. Speaking of physical damage, this was the first time he had experienced it. Yuan Tianji roared in pain and soared into the sky. However, Jimo, Luo Kedi, Rui Butong, and Ao Xieyun chased after him like a shadow. While he was in midair, Jimo's sword actually slipped out of his hand. Whoosh. I only need a little bit of time to catch my breath. As long as I can catch my breath, I will be able to crush all of these ants into powder. I will be able to escape unhurriedly. I only need a little bit of time, that's all. Yuan Tianming's heart was screaming crazily at this moment. He had never imagined that he would fall into such a miserable state one day. Just as he thought of this, he felt a pain on his back. A sword had fiercely pierced through his back. Although he was suddenly injured, Yuan Tianming's state of mind was not disturbed. With a loud shout, his body spun rapidly. The long sword that had just pierced through his body was only halfway in when the whole sword had already turned into powder. However, even if it was only halfway in, it had already pierced through his body. Right at the place where the long sword had turned into powder, a fountain of black blood gushed out. It had only gushed out for a moment, and then it had already turned into a pervasive black smoke. The bloody hole that had been pierced through there had already been repaired. No matter how much one's origin energy had been consumed, that unimaginably fast recovery speed had already become a kind of instinct. Even in such a situation, Yuan Tianming was still extremely difficult to kill. However, when Luo Kedi, Rui Butong, and Ao Xieyun saw that Jimo's move was effective, they all followed suit. 3 long swords were mixed with all of their cultivation and flew out of their hand. Like meteors chasing after the moon, they pierced towards Yuan Tianming. As the battle continued, at this moment, all the combatants were already high up in the sky. There was nothing around them that could block their line of sight. Below, almost everyone was stretching their necks to watch all the movements in the sky. They watched as Yuan Tianming rose up step by step, and the Tribulation Brothers did their best to chase after him, not giving Yuan Tianming any time to catch his breath. At this moment, everyone's heart was beating like a drum. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Everyone was extremely nervous. The moment of victory or defeat might be decided at this moment, or perhaps at the next moment. 3 swords flew over in a crisscross. Yuan Tianming roared furiously. With a kick, 2 swords were kicked far away by him. With just a buzz, they had already turned into meteors in the sky. However, Ao Xieyun's golden dragon sword pierced into his thigh like lightning. Chapter 2334. This time, he didn't fake his life at all. The damage caused was incomparable to Jimo's half-pierced sword. Although it wasn't a vital point, the injury was more severe. Yuan Tianjie screamed loudly and spat out a large amount of black gas. He reached out and pulled out the golden dragon sword, breaking it into 2 with a crack. But this little bit of delay was enough. Chu Yang once again attacked with his sword. A beautiful red silk arrived first like a flying immortal. It fluttered in the air for hundreds of feet and wrapped around Yuan Tianjie's neck with extreme precision. It twisted fiercely. Yuan Tianjie's eyes widened, and the black gas around his body shook violently. That red silk instantly turned into fine powder with a bang. The owner of the red silk, Mo Qingwu, also spat out a mouthful of blood and was on the verge of collapse. But Chu Yang's calamity sword had already pierced into Yuan Tianjie's chest. The unique devouring power of the calamity sword was immediately activated. Yuan Tianjie used his strength to break the red silk around his neck. He was just about to breathe a sigh of relief when he suddenly screamed, "What sword is this? What sword is this?" His scream was actually filled with unprecedented fear. A palm hit Chu Yang's chest with a bang. Chu Yang's hand pulled out the calamity sword from Yuan Tianjie's body. He spat out a mouthful of blood and was thrown far away. A saber fell from the sky. It was Dong Wushang holding the saber with both hands. He slashed down fiercely, and there was no return. With a kai sound, this blade hacked down with extreme speed, but it hacked down fiercely from Yuan Tianjie's left shoulder, all the way to his waist, practically cleaving this heavenly emperor ink cloud into 2 halves. But when the black saber slashed down on Yuan Tianjie's internal organs, it suddenly encountered an extremely strong resistance. It couldn't go down even an inch. Yuan Tianjie shouted loudly and suddenly kicked Dong Wushang's chest. With a crack, Dong Wushang's chest caved in completely. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell from the sky powerlessly. Yuan Tianjie reached out his right hand and touched the hilt of the black saber that was still embedded in his body. His face was filled with indescribable pain. Without waiting for Yuan Tianjie to pull out the hilt of the black saber, another beam of sword light had already arrived. With a shua sound, Yuan Tianjie's right hand, which had just touched the hilt of his sword, was chopped off by that sword. Yuan Tianjie, who was in extreme pain, suddenly leaned to the side, his shoulder slamming into the person's chest. Jiyu Duxing. Cloudy Heaven Sword. Jiyu Duxing let out a furious roar. He simply didn't care about how many bones in his chest had already been shattered by Yuan Tianjie's attack. He actually seized the opportunity to step on the handle of Dong Wushang's dark saber before he was sent flying by the powerful recoil, and stomped down forcefully. At this moment, the black saber was still stuck in Yuan Tianjie's body. The sound of flesh rubbing against each other could be heard, but it only lasted for a brief moment. Boom. Although Jiyu Duxing gave it his all, he only had time to exert a little bit of strength. Yuan Tianjie's counterforce had already sent him flying out, and he had completely lost his ability to move. However, the black saber continued to slash down 3 inches even though it was only for a moment. At this moment, it had already struck Yuan Tianjie's thoracic vertebra. In fact, the tip of the blade had already sunk in. Just a little bit more and it would have broken Yuan Tianjie's thoracic vertebra. Luo Kedi, Rui Butong, and Ao Xieyun rushed up at the same time. They surrounded Yuan Tianjie, who was howling in agony, and pounced on him fiercely. For a moment, countless punches and kicks landed on Yuan Tianjie's face and body in a disorderly manner, but without any fakeness at all. Yuan Tianjie passively dealt with the attacks coming from all directions, but his main focus was still on the black saber. He still wanted to pull the black saber out of his body. The black saber that was stuck in his chest was Yuan Tianjie's greatest worry. If it couldn't be removed, how could he talk about recovering his body? Ao Xieyun suddenly stretched out his right hand in the middle of the battle. It actually turned into a huge dragon claw and grabbed Yuan Tianjie's head fiercely. Yuan Tianjie roared and kicked Ao Xieyun into the distance. However, Rui Butong had already spun himself like a windmill. In the nick of time, he kicked fiercely into Yuan Tianjie's stomach. Yes, he kicked directly into Yuan Tianjie's stomach. His whole foot passed through Yuan Tianjie's skin and flesh, and along the gap cut open by the black saber, it directly kicked Yuan Tianjie's internal organs. Yuan Tianjie screamed desperately. His left hand that had already been split open actually turned into smoke, slowly curling down and grabbing Rui Butong's foot tightly. His right hand, which already had no palm, smashed onto Rui Butong's face like a huge hammer. Every time it smashed, Rui Butong would let out a scream. But at the same time, Yuan Tianjie also let out a scream. His hand had already been chopped off, and there was no time for it to regrow. He could only use his pale white bones to smash onto Rui Butong's face. How could it not hurt? The people below trembled all over when they saw this scene. When had they ever seen such a tragic battle in this generation? Yuan Tianjie had already smashed Rui Butong more than a dozen times in an instant. Rui Butong's foot was grabbed by the other party, and he couldn't escape at all. His whole head was smashed like a rotten persimmon. His brain was splattered. A flower bloomed in front of Yuan Tianjie's eyes like a dream. Bang! Viburnum flower. Countless petals drilled into Yuan Tianjie's face at the same time like ghosts, and then they exploded. Under the intense pain, Yuan Tianjie's left hand finally let go of Rui Butong's foot. He covered his face with his hand and screamed miserably. Chu Yang roared. Blood was still spurting out of his mouth, but the tribulation sword in his hand had already turned into flowing light again. The tribulation sword was used again. What harm is there in slaughtering the whole world? The tribulation sword and the sword collided with Dong Wushang's black saber with incomparable precision. First, there was a crisp bang. Then, there was a crack. Yuan Tianjie's spine was finally cut in half. Under the strong momentum bestowed by the tribulation sword, the black saber, with a fierce driving force, pushed through Yuan Tianjie's waist like a hot knife through butter. Half of his body fell straight down from the sky. Below, Mo Tianjie spread out his 2 hands, which turned into 2 huge hands with a radius of 1,000 feet, and slapped down fiercely. The lower half of Yuan Tianji's body that fell down, along with his 2 feet, bones, and flesh, instantly turned into minced meat. Yuan Tianji's demonic bones were smashed into pieces. However, Mo Tianji's 2 palms also turned into minced meat under this blow. Yuan Tianji's bones were really hard to the extreme. Even though Mo Tianji destroyed them with 1 strike, the rebound power of the bones that had already lost the support of life force still shattered Mo Tianji's hands into pieces. However, Mo Tianji's blow still destroyed more than half of Yuan Tianji's soul in the end. 2 feet, 1 left hand, and the entire lower half of his body were all smashed into a mist of blood. The moment the lower half of his body was completely smashed, Yuan Tianji seemed to have felt it. He looked up to the sky and howled miserably, extremely mournfully. However, at this moment, Chu Yang controlled the tribulation sword and ruthlessly stabbed into the remaining half of Yuan Tianji's body. From the front, he pushed the remaining half of Yuan Tianji's body 1,000 feet away. Although Yuan Tianji's entire lower half of his body was chopped off, his internal organs actually didn't fall out because of this. Instead, there was a layer of thick black gas that held them in place. However, at this moment, even if he could still hold on and not die, he had lost any power to fight back. Facing Chu Yang's fierce and crazy attacks, Yuan Tianji suddenly roared. At this moment, his neck suddenly elongated. He opened his mouth, and his white teeth ruthlessly bit towards Chu Yang's throat. Yuan Tianji's limbs were crippled, and his body was incomplete. He didn't have the strength to fight back, but he still refused to admit defeat. He actually fought back with his teeth. His fighting spirit was really terrifying. Unfortunately, this final counterattack was still meaningless. With a wave of his left hand, Chu Yang had already taken out a large piece of star iron from the tribulation space. He ruthlessly slapped it on Yuan Tianji's mouth and stuffed it into it. Yuan Tianji painfully shook his head. With a loud explosion, the star iron in his mouth was actually forcefully spat out and ruthlessly smashed into Chu Yang's face. Chu Yang didn't care about this change. He let out a loud cry. It was truly heart-wrenching, and under Yuan Tianji's body, after this torment, the broken wound started to drip black blood again. After Luo Kedi retreated, he turned into a shooting star and rushed towards the wound under Yuan Tianji's body with his sword. From the wound, the tip of the sword rushed in like a poisonous dragon. Even half of Luo Kedi's upper body also drilled into Yuan Tianji's body together. With a muffled roar, Luo Kedi's lower body was constantly spinning. The extremely sharp sword spun fiercely, crushing the internal organs that Yuan Tianji had been carefully guarding all along. Countless pieces of flesh and blood turned into cow hair in the air and fell down like fine rain. With another bang, Yuan Tianji's body actually exploded in the air. The 12 flesh wings on his back slowly fell from the air. It was Ji Mo who came over on his sword and crushed those 12 flesh wings in the air. Only then did Luo Kedi's entire body come out from Yuan Tianji's chest. He was covered in blood. The Heavenly Emperor of Ink Cloud's entire body was gone at this moment. Only his head was left. But he actually still didn't die. A pair of angry eyes stared fiercely at Chu Yang. A strange voice was still shouting, "Chu Yang, I won't spare you. I definitely won't let you off." Chu Yang snorted coldly. One ray of cold light pierced 10,000 fathoms. With a few poof sounds, the tip of the sword poured down like a rainstorm, all landing on Yuan Tianji's head. His 2 eyes were first pierced blind. Then, his entire head was chopped into pieces by the sword. Finally, it completely disappeared. At this point, the Heavenly Emperor of Ink Cloud, Yuan Tianji, was finally dead. Only until now did the millions of people watching the battle below finally breathe a sigh of relief. It turned out that heavenly demons were actually so hard to kill. Already killed to the point where only his head was left, he actually still didn't die. Still spouting nonsense. Chapter 23:35. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji both frowned, paying attention to all the movements around them. The destruction of Yuan Tianji's physical body was only the first step. However, his powerful divine spirit would definitely not be destroyed so easily. In this battle, both of them were trying, Both of them were summarizing their findings. However, it was undeniable that both of them had a common worry. Extraterrestrial demons were indeed not combative. If they met on the battlefield in the future, with their current strength, they would definitely be at a disadvantage against such a strange enemy. They had to strengthen their soul attacks. Otherwise, they would not be able to pull such a team into the battlefield. At this moment, the calm sky was suddenly filled with wind and clouds again. A black fog curled up and flew. The more it spun, the faster it spun. Then, a human figure condensed from the black fog. Yuan Tianjie. It was Yuan Tianjie. Just like when he was alive. Just like just now. Everyone was shocked. Could it be that he could be reborn even after being destroyed? Could it be that this extraterrestrial demon was actually immortal? How could they fight against him? Some of the more knowledgeable experts sighed in their hearts. This was not Yuan Tianjie being reborn unharmed, but Yuan Tianjie's divine spirit appearing after his physical body was destroyed. Yuan Tianjie's divine spirit had actually reached an astonishing level where it could survive without the help of a physical body. Yuan Tianjie's godly soul floated quietly in the air. His eyes stared fiercely at Chu Yang, and he actually opened his mouth to speak. Chu Yang, you ants are indeed very powerful. You can actually completely destroy my physical body. But what you didn't expect is that my godly soul has already reached the transcendent stage of indestructibility. So what if you destroy my physical body? As long as I go back, we will meet again on the battlefield in a few years. In addition to the deep-rooted hatred in Yuan Tianjie's voice, there was actually some pride. What other methods do you have? You can use them one by one and see if you can stop my divine spirit from leaving. The group of experts were all dumbfounded, not knowing what to do. Yes, for an expert who had already reached this level, ordinary methods were indeed difficult to deal with, let alone destroy. Just because he was no longer afraid of any physical attacks in the world. But at this moment, a loud phoenix cry suddenly rang out in the sky, and a ball of raging fire burned without warning. In the land of fire, a person slowly stood up and said with a strange smile, "There are all kinds of laws in the world, and there are ways to break them. Others may not be able to do anything to you, but since you have turned into a soul, there is no way you can escape from my grasp." In the midst of the raging flames, Rui Butong, who had been almost smashed into meat paste and had lost all signs of life, had actually completely recovered. He strode out, his entire body surrounded by blazing white flames, and rushed towards Yuan Tianjie at top speed. Yuan Tianming was shocked and shouted in disbelief, So you are that phoenix." Rui Butong burst into laughter. "Yes, I'm that phoenix. Fuck your mother, what do you mean by that? It's that. It's a girl. Fuck. You, this skyfiend cub, don't even know how to speak properly. You deserve to die in your old hands." The indifference on the face of Yuan Tianjie's soul instantly disappeared, and a look of genuine horror appeared on his face. Suddenly, he flew up rapidly, obviously wanting to escape and retreat unscathed. Rui Butong burst into laughter. "Idiot, a soul actually wants to run away in front of the Nirvana heavenly fire? You are a fucking idiot." With a boom, flames suddenly rose into the sky and filled the whole sky. In the blazing white flames, Yuan Tianjie's soul struggled painfully in the sky, turning into a long strip one moment, and then into a round ball the next. But no matter how he changed, he couldn't escape the burning of the monstrous fire. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that this flying devil king of the Skyfiends was destined to fall here today. Chu Yang waved his hand, and Rui Butong burst into laughter, shrinking the flames a little. In the flames, Yuan Tianjie's soul was still screaming in agony, earth-shattering. The continuous burning of the Nirvana heavenly fire was something that even a man of steel couldn't bear. That was the ultimate pain that went straight to the soul. Not to mention being burned directly in the form of a soul. Chu Yang took a step forward and said, "Yuan Tianjie, is it very painful?" Yuan Tianjie's spirit was screaming. He was in extreme pain. For a moment, he couldn't say a word. But his eyes were full of pleading as he looked at Chu Yang. It was obvious that Yuan Tianjie couldn't bear it anymore. The Nirvana heavenly fire was indeed powerful. It could actually make a Skyfiend king so painful that he wished he was dead. As long as you answer a few of my questions honestly, I can make the decision to let you die a quick and painless death. You don't have to suffer this anymore. Chu Yang said softly. He believed that a quick and painless death was definitely something that Yuan Tianjie yearned for even in his dreams right now. Yuan Tianjie struggled painfully and asked, "What do you want to ask me?" "I want to ask." Before Chu Yang could finish his words, the sky was suddenly filled with thousands of rays of multicolored light. An endless holy aura instantly filled the entire black cloud sky. A seven-colored cloud suddenly appeared in midair, and a voice said with a sigh, "Yuan Tianjie, I didn't expect you to really be an extraterrestrial demon." The seven-colored cloud in the sky stretched out a big hand without any warning. On this hand, there was even a section of a pure white sleeve. This hand actually ignored the nirvana heavenly fire that could burn everything in the world, and easily reached into it. It grabbed Yuan Tianjie's soul and said lightly, "Extraterrestrial demon, you really have guts. You actually dared to enter my heavenly imperial court and fool everyone to this extent." Yuan Tianjie's remnant soul was obviously struggling violently. It wanted to say something, but no sound came out when it opened its mouth. The owner of this big hand sighed softly and said lightly, "Since you're an extraterrestrial demon, you deserve to be consigned to eternal damnation." The fingers gently clenched together, and with a pop sound, it was as if a bubble was being crushed. Yuan Tianjie's soul was instantly crushed by this big hand. A surge of soul energy soared into the sky, and then turned into the purest spiritual energy in the world. Heavenly Emperor of the Dark Sky Cloud, Yuan Tianjie, the extraterrestrial demon king of the flying demons. Finally, on this day, his soul had been completely destroyed, and he had completely disappeared from this world. It's the world-purifying hand, His Majesty the Saint Monarch has arrived. Mu Kang Lan, who had the highest cultivation, shouted with joy. The world-purifying hand was recognized as the #1 person in the heavenly imperial court, the Saint Monarch's famous move. The power of this move was unknown, because everyone who received this move had all died. When this hand appeared, all demons bowed their heads, and when this move was used, all demons and evils would die. Today, this supreme move reappeared in the world, and it continued to write the legends of the past. Under this move, even Yuan Tianjie's soul, the flying demon king of extraterrestrial demons, was not spared. With one move, his soul was destroyed. That big hand did not disappear just like that. Instead, it continued to stretch out slowly and said lightly, "Extraterrestrial demons, since you've come to the heavenly imperial court, then you can't be allowed to live." It actually grabbed Yi Luoyu, who was about to escape in the distance. Even with her cultivation, she did not have the slightest ability to resist this big hand. She was grabbed by that hand just like that. Then, with a crack, her entire body was instantly crushed into powder. Just like his master, his soul was destroyed, and he was consigned to eternal damnation. In fact, he didn't even have the time to let out a scream. Ever since this big hand appeared, Chu Yang and Mo Tianji had very tacitly stopped all their subsequent actions. They only watched quietly as the subsequent events unfolded. They watched as this big hand easily destroyed Yuan Tianjie's soul and Yi Luoyu's soul. As for the remaining extraterrestrial demon horde on the ground, they were also wiped clean by everyone. Mo Yuntian, this part of the world was finally clean. There were no more demonic evils in this place. But for some reason, when the two of them looked at the divine hand that was filled with righteousness and holy radiance, they couldn't help but feel a sense of fear. Whether it was Chu Yang or Mo Tianji, these two were extremely daring people. Although they were only in their 20s, the experiences they had in these 2 decades were more colorful than those old monsters and immortals who had lived for thousands, tens of thousands, or millions of years. Aside from having amazing cultivation and unparalleled skills, they were also confident that their intelligence was not inferior to anyone else's. The two of them thought back to all the opponents they had faced in the past. Some were shocked, some were respectful, and some were surprised. No matter if it was Diwu Qingru, the Tribulation Clan, the Fifth Law Supreme, or the Double Sky Demon, no matter how strong and powerful their opponents were, no matter how difficult it was to defeat them, they had never felt fear. However, at this moment, facing someone they had never met before, they actually felt a sense of fear from the bottom of their hearts. How could the two of them not be shocked? That extremely holy seven-colored cloud paused for a moment amidst the cheers of the crowd. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji could clearly feel that the person above wanted to say something, but in the end, he did not say anything. After a while, that seven-colored cloud turned into an extremely dazzling seven-colored rainbow. It soared into the sky, leaving behind a boundless brilliance in the sky as it rapidly disappeared into the horizon. There was only silence left on the ground. His Majesty the Saint Emperor is invincible. Long live His Majesty the Saint Emperor. Suddenly, a loud roar sounded. Tens of millions of people cheered at the same time. Chu Yang let out a soft sigh. This battle had finally come to an end. Tribulation against the Heavenly Emperor. Although he won in the end, he also paid a huge price. Chu Yang, Mo Qingwu, Dong Wushang, Jiyu Duxing, Luo Kedi, and Ji Mo were all seriously injured. Mo Tianji, who had the lightest injury, also paid the price of having both his palms crippled. Rui Butong was even beaten until he was furious. However, the heavenly demon king that they were facing now was still in a bleak state where his strength had fallen to rock bottom and his cultivation was less than 10%. Chapter 2336. Then, there were some things that one might not think much of when they were done, but when one reflected on them afterwards and looked forward to the future, one couldn't help but feel a bit of fear and confusion. Mo Tianji wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his newly reborn robe and said indifferently, "If Yuan Tianjie wasn't injured at all, with his cultivation, I'm afraid none of us would have survived today." Chu Yang nodded heavily to show his approval. The crazed book and the painting king were standing in an empty space. They seemed to have lost something. There was an indescribable melancholy and loss on their faces. In the end, he still couldn't take revenge with his own hands. For the two of them, this was undoubtedly an extremely regretful thing. However, there was nothing he could do. Both of them saw Yuan Tianjie's ultimate attack. If the two of them had fought face to face at that time, they would have been easily killed by Yuan Tianji. In this world, perhaps only Chu Yang's calamity sword was unaffected and could counterattack immediately. Only Rui Butong's nirvana heavenly fire could destroy such a divine soul. However, the empty melancholy in their hearts could not be dispelled. No one could dispel it. Revenge for his family, revenge for his brothers. At this moment, all of these thoughts surged into his heart. That familiar voice and smile were still vivid in their minds, causing the two of them to feel unbearably sad and sorrowful. Compared to their desolation, Mu Kanglan's mental state was much better. During this period of time, he had been carrying the stigma of being rebellious, ungrateful, and reckless. Especially since this stigma had been personally confirmed by the number one person in the imperial court, the Holy Monarch, there was almost no room for refutation. In this regard, Mu Kanglan no longer held any hope of being able to wash away the stain on his name. However, in today's battle against the demons, the one who finally understood Yuan Tianming's heavenly demon divine soul was the Lord Sage. This undoubtedly meant that the Lord Sage approved of his actions. All the stain on his name had been removed. Although he couldn't help but recall his past friendship with Yuan Tianming, he felt extremely gratified in his heart. Yuan Tianji is confirmed to be a demonic Evildor. The Holy Monarch has personally killed the Devil's Spawn. These two pieces of news spread like a gust of wind. The entire black cloud sky suddenly became boiling. But no matter what, Yuan Tianji was dead in the end, and Mo Yuntian had finally eliminated this biggest hidden danger. The two armies joined forces. Given Mu Kanglan's methods and his former prestige in the military, he was able to easily pacify the discontent of the opposing army. They set off majestically toward the capital. As for the original crime of the Dream Slayer army, it naturally disappeared. However, Meng Wuya no longer wanted to return to Mo Yuntian. "Over there are also good brothers who went through the tribulation with me. We have the same goal, and that is to slaughter all the heavenly devils. General Mu, you'll always be my big brother. We'll meet again in the future, on the battlefield outside the realm." Mu Kanglan could only sigh at Meng Wu Ya's choice. Under the powerful effect of the heavy pill, everyone quickly recovered from their injuries. Chu Yang and the others didn't want to go. However, Xiedan Qiong couldn't bear to part with the brothers who had just gathered. So, he invited them with all his might. But, everyone was also reluctant to part with them. So, they formed the last echelon, and set off together. Besides this reason, Chu Yang always felt that there should be some unsolved mysteries in Mo Yuntian that needed to be unearthed himself. Yuan Tianji was indeed dead, but his death also took away some of the mysteries forever. How did he sneak into Mo Yuntian back then? If he didn't have the support of a considerable force, it would be impossible for him to succeed. Chu Yang absolutely didn't believe that Yuan Tianjie, who had no foundation, could reach where he was today. Secondly, during the Battle of Xiao Heaven, 2 of Hao's 7 bodyguards died inexplicably in the black cloud sky. Was there a connection between the two? What in the world had happened? This was also another unsolved mystery. Apart from this, the other 5 of Xiao Heaven's 7 reinforcements all died in Mo Yuntian. Was there anything strange about each other? Perhaps others might not know about these people, but Yuan Tianjie definitely knew. With these mysteries to be solved, how could Chu Yang give up if he didn't go to the palace to take a look? Tan Tan, who hadn't appeared all this while, finally appeared. He was dejected and listless. Of course, Chu Yang noticed this guy. However, he ignored him. Until this night, Xie Danqiong specially ordered the guards to withdraw so that the entire campsite would become the private domain of Brother Jie. Everyone brought in a huge amount of wine and was ready to drink to their heart's content. Anyway, there were so many experts guarding outside. For example, Zi Xieching, Mo Qingwu, Mo Lei Chu Le and the others didn't drink. Everyone was very assured about their own safety. Moreover, regarding the next step, it still required everyone to discuss with one another. A group of women gathered together and chattered noisily. A group of men gathered around a table and drank big mouthfuls of wine. It was very lively and noisy. Ji Mo, Luo Kudi, and the others were flying all over the place while holding wine jars. They didn't stop for even a moment. Tan Tan had been drinking this wine in silence. He looked very lonely. However, everyone ignored him. Everyone knew that this guy couldn't hide his thoughts. Sooner or later, he wouldn't be able to hold it in and tell the whole story. However, they definitely couldn't take the initiative to ask him. If you asked, "What's wrong with you? Why are you so depressed?" Tan Tan would definitely say, "I can do whatever I want." Why do you care? You want to know what's wrong with me? I won't tell you. One sentence could definitely choke someone to death. Therefore, everyone had a tacit understanding not to ask anyone. They deliberately left him hanging, but of course, they didn't talk about anything serious. They were just making a fuss, slapping each other's ass, and fighting with each other. Often, 2 of them would hold down one of them, and then pry open his mouth and pour wine in. The scene was so lively that it seemed like it was going to turn the sky upside down. The more lively it was and the more they ignored him, the more Tan Tan couldn't hold it in. Finally, bang bang bang. Tan Tan used his chopsticks to hit the plate hard. He said angrily, "Hey, hey hey hey, hey." Everyone looked at each other and smiled knowingly. They all had an inexplicable sense of pleasure from a successful prank like this guy really can't hold it in anymore. Chu Yang turned his head and said discontentedly, "What the hell are you doing? Are you trying to rebel? Eating is eating. Why are you hitting the plate? Isn't this spoiling everyone's mood?" Tan Tan's face showed infinite grievance. "I have something to say." Everyone said together, "What do you want to say?" Their voices were very uniform, faintly revealing a sense of ridicule. Tan Tan took a few hurried breaths. Then, he finally shouted, "Haven't you guys noticed that I'm not normal these few days?" Jimo frowned pretentiously and said, "Not normal? What's not normal? I don't see anything wrong with you." Luo Kedi showed a puzzled expression and said, "Could it be that you've come during those few days of the month? But, you're a man." Everyone roared with laughter. Zi Xieching and the other girls at the side all blushed and cursed angrily. They turned their heads to one side and ignored this group of stinky men. "You guys don't care about me at all," Tan Tan said in an aggrieved manner. The more he thought about it, the more aggrieved he felt. His eyes turned red. Dong Wushang suddenly stood up and shouted, Who? Who? Who bullied my brother Tan Tan? Tell me. I'll help you vent your anger. Xie Danqiong rubbed his palms and said, That's right. Tan Tan, brother-in-law, tell me. Who was so blind to bully you? Could it be that girl Danfeng? It doesn't matter. Even if she's my biological sister, as her uncle, I'll put justice before family and teach this stinky girl a lesson. Could it be that she's rebelling against her? Doesn't she know that treating her husband as her god is a principle that women need to abide by? Everyone burst into laughter. Xie Danqiong's vehement speech, which was filled with righteous indignation, couldn't be more fake. It wasn't like Xie Danqiong didn't have eyes these past few days. How could he not see that his sister was bossing Tan Tan around? Between Tan Tan and Xie Danfeng, the one who had the final say was definitely his sister. The so-called principle between the two of them was that Tan Tan treated his wife as his god. There was no doubt about it. Therefore, Xie Danqiong's words were completely meaningless except for the fact that his sister Xie Danfeng rolled her eyes at him. Everyone comforted him one after another. But everyone's words of comfort carried a strong sense of schadenfreude and a sense of watching a show. After a round of comforting, Tan Tan, who was comforted, finally couldn't bear it anymore. He flew into a rage and suddenly stood up. He pointed his fingers one by one and scolded, You bunch of hypocrite. I've seen through you. Everyone was taken aback when they heard this. Then, they burst into laughter. Everyone was rocking back and forth as they laughed. Chu Yang even spurted out the wine in his mouth. He slapped the table and laughed without any manners. Is this guy finally unable to bear it? What's wrong? What's wrong? Everyone laughed and asked. I've been depressed these past few days. I didn't even participate in that crucial battle against the devil. I've been living alone. But, you don't care about me. Tan Tan's eyes turned red. He was furious. Are you still my good brothers? You've gone too far. Mo Tianji came out to smooth things over. Tell me, what's going on? I wanted to ask, but I didn't dare to. I really didn't dare to ask. Me too. The brothers nodded like chicks pecking rice. Tan Tan's mood finally improved a little. But, he sighed again and said, You guys didn't even ask about my senior brother Chu Yang. I'm so sad. We're the closest. Chu Yang laughed out loud. What's the use of asking you? You didn't say anything. Who doesn't know that you talk as if you've eaten shit when you're depressed? Tan Tan suddenly realized, so, you guys were waiting for me to say it. Motherfucker, I won't say it. I won't say it even if you beat me to death. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. Let's drink, everyone. Let's drink as if it's rare for anyone to hear it. Mo Tianji's attitude immediately changed. He raised his wine bowl and toasted. Chapter 2337. This time, even the womenfolk who had been listening to them with their heads tilted couldn't help but hold their bellies and laugh. Xie Danfeng kept stomping her feet. She muttered and cursed Tan Tan for being a disappointment. It could be imagined that Tan Tan would suffer again after this meal. Ever since I've seen the fighting style of the heavenly devils, I've realized that those heavenly devils are very similar to the ones recorded in the ancient books of our divine race. Tan Tan frowned in distress. Moreover, I'm also a devil king. Could it be that I'm actually related to the heavenly demons? Tan Tan had been tangled up with this problem for the past few days. He didn't eat or drink. How can I be so evil? Tan Tan couldn't sleep for a few days because of this problem. Ha ha ha. Tan Tan's worries had already been guessed by everyone. They knew that this guy was tangled up with this problem. You're a heavenly demon? Aren't you being too whimsical? Jimo raised his eyes and said disdainfully, Heavenly demons have wings. Do you? Heavenly demons have 3 eyes on their foreheads. Do you? Tan Tan opened his eyes wide. I don't. You don't have anything. So, why do you call yourself a heavenly demon? Don't make me laugh to death. Everyone despised him. So, I'm not. I'm not a heavenly demon, Tan Tan said, full of hope. Get out of here. You're at most a demon. You're definitely not a heavenly demon. Mo Tianji burst into laughter. Just like there are humans, elves, and demons in this world. Demons should also have many races. They're very different from each other. Humans have good people and bad people. They have all kinds of races. They're very different. You don't have to say any more. I understand. I completely understand. Tan Tan slapped the table and stood up. He pointed at Mo Tianji and cursed, "Motherfucker Mo Tianji, why didn't you say so earlier? You made me worry for so long. It's all your fault." Mo Tianji was stunned when he heard this. He didn't react for a while. Then, anger rose in his heart. He became angry. I'm wrong for enlightening you. Old 4, old 5, old 7, old 8. Help third brother beat this guy up. Mo Tianji's domineering sighed as the third brother finally revealed itself. He gazed at Dong Wushong, Xie Danqiong, and the rest of the younger brothers with a threatening look in his eyes. Everyone who was originally unconvinced and disobedient suddenly trembled in fear. So, they all fought bravely to be the first to show off. Beat him up. This bastard actually dared to scold my third brother. How dare he? That's right, that's right. Give him a good beating. Beat him up until his head is swollen. Let's see if he still dares to not learn his lesson. That's right, that's right. Otherwise, how could I have such a deep impression of him? I have to let him know who he can offend and who he can't. So, a certain great demon king Tan Tan finally transformed into a great demon king pig after he had been violently beaten up by a group of people. He stood up with a bloody nose and a swollen face. However, he was in a good mood, and was laughing heartily. If someone who didn't know what was going on was here, they would be sure of one thing: this ugly guy was a masochist. So many people had joined forces to beat him up, and he was laughing heartily in satisfaction. How could an ordinary person do that? Fourth brother Dong Wushong smiled in a simple and honest manner. He patted Tan Tan's shoulder vigorously. Brother, you can rest assured. Even if you're a heavenly demon, you're still my brother. Tan Tan was startled as he heard these words. But, his heart was shaken again. Dong Wushong had always been a man of few words. But, these words carried a lot of weight. Tan Tan's eyes became wet. He fiercely punched back at Dong Wushong. Then, he loudly scolded, "Go to hell. You're the heavenly demon. I'm a great demon king. I'm fundamentally different from those heavenly demons. Remember this clearly." Ha 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 ha. However, Mo Tianji and the others could clearly hear the slight tremor in Tan Tan's laughter. Chu Yang smiled and softly said, "I say, junior brother Tan Tan. You have too many knots in your heart. Especially, when you're in front of your brothers." Chu Yang looked at Tan Tan and said meaningfully. He didn't say anything more after he had spoken halfway. He knew that Tan Tan would understand. In fact, he would understand. Tan Tan immediately fell into silence after Chu Yang's words. However, everyone could clearly feel that the aura on his body was gradually changing. The brothers quietly drank wine. Their hearts were filled with joy. That was because Tan Tan's aura had returned to normal. Moreover, it was becoming more and more pure and powerful. All these signs indicated that he had thoroughly walked out of his heart's devil. He had gotten rid of it, and had overcome it. The heart's devil could no longer restrain Tan Tan. A very long time passed. Suddenly, a burst of explosive sounds echoed in the air. Everyone turned their heads to look. They saw that Tan Tan's long hair was fluttering in the wind. His entire body was curled up in black energy. And, an extremely dark luster had suddenly emerged. Even his eyes had turned into the purest black. Then, the black and glossy energy gradually took the shape of a huge cocoon-like thing, and wrapped Tan Tan's entire body inside it. In fact, it was airtight. Chu Yang felt a burst of joy in his heart. After Tan Tan had gotten rid of his heart's devil, his cultivation had made another breakthrough. He had advanced by leaps and bounds again. In fact, Tan Tan had encountered extraordinary opportunities along the way. That day, he and Chu Yang were in the dark place of Yama Gorge. He had inherited the supreme true spirit. His fate had already exceeded the scope of predestination. It was even higher than tribulation. He was also the only person who had the hope of standing side by side with Chu Yang in the future. However, recently, his cultivation progress had stagnated because of the heart's devil. Instead, he had fallen behind tribulation. He told Xie Dan Feng to carry Tan Tan back to the tent. He solemnly instructed that no one was to disturb them. Then, he sat down again. What should we do next? The one who asked this question was Xie Dan Qiong. He had won the battle with Yuan Tianjie. However, as the owner of this place, Xie Dan Qiong, who was about to ascend to the peak of power in Mo Yun Tian, felt a little empty, frightened, and uncomfortable. An inexplicable emotion similar to "I don't know what I should do next" arose spontaneously. What should we do? Let nature take its course. Mo Tianji chuckled. Let nature take its course. How can I let nature take its course? Do you want me to sit on the throne of Heaven Emperor Mo Yun? Xie Dan Qiong seemed to be even more at a loss. He blurted out. Just let nature take its course. You must sit on the throne of Heaven Emperor Mo Yun. You must sit on it firmly all the way. Mo Tianji's smiling eyes turned cold. Even his voice became awe-inspiring at this moment. You don't need to care about what others do. You only need to ascend to the throne of Heaven Emperor. Then, use the destiny of this world to nourish yourself. Do your best to improve your cultivation. Also, find and cultivate a group of experts. At the critical moment, you can pull them out to prepare for the future. Heaven Emperor Mo Yun. Xie Dan Qiong smiled bitterly. It was easier said than done to be the Heaven Emperor. Just now, he blurted it out in a moment of impulse. His cultivation, reputation, status, seemed to be insufficient, right? Don't think too much about this and that. The main reason why Yuan Tianjie was eliminated by us was that he was a heavenly demon. He was not a native of the Heaven Imperial Court. Even though he had a certain amount of destiny, he could not fully utilize it. Therefore, I dare to conclude that Yuan Tianjie's combat power is not inferior to Di Hu. However, in some aspects, he is definitely far from enough. But you are different. You can do it because you are a human. Even if you are not a native, just being a human is enough, Mo Tianji said in a deep voice. Have you ever thought about my cultivation, reputation, status, and merits? Xie Dan Qiong shook his head helplessly. Although it was equivalent to a successful rebellion now, everyone knew that this time, it was not a real rebellion in the true sense. The main purpose of this incident was to kill the heavenly demon, not to rebel. This was where the righteousness lay and could not be changed. Therefore, it was completely impossible for Xie Dan Qiong to directly ascend to the position of Heaven Emperor in the name of rebellion. Xie Dan Qiong was not stupid. He had at least self-awareness. He knew that he could not do it now. He was not qualified. All of this is not a problem, Mo Tianji said coldly. Long before I came, I had already instructed the intelligence department to make preparations. As long as the news of Yuan Tianjie's death was confirmed, there would be extravagant follow-up actions. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Even Chu Yang, who had always understood Mo Tianji's way of doing things, was no exception. Wasn't this way of doing things a little too much? The first moment after Yuan Tianjie was killed, I had already issued the order. Mo Tianji's eyes were cold. The general content was that you established the Heavenly Armament Pavilion because you discovered Yuan Tianjie's identity. However, at that time, your words carried little weight. You could only desperately gather forces in case of emergencies. Facts have proven that your concerns were correct. The cause of the rebellion of the Seven Kings was also because of your many efforts to reveal Yuan Tianjie's true identity to the Seven Kings. Therefore, the Seven Kings angrily fought with Yuan Tianjie. Regarding this point, you can rest assured. The calligraphy and painting kings will testify for you. As for Meng Wu Ya's side, it was also because of you, Xie Dan Qiong, that he took the opportunity to leave Mo Yun Tian. He accumulated his strength and prepared to make a comeback, so that he could work together day and night to destroy the devil. And now, Didn't he really come back? Therefore, this is also a genuine witness and material evidence. As for Mu Kanglan, it was also because of you, Xiedan Qiong, that he was able to recognize Yuan Tianjie's true identity in time and set things right. And us, who played a key role in the battle against the demons, were all because you were worried about the chaos of the heavenly demons. Therefore, you specially invited us to come and help you kill the demons, and in the end, Yuan Tianjie was killed by your scheme. In your battle against the heavenly demon, everyone was injured. Only you managed to severely injure the heavenly demon's body, which was the key to victory. In the end, you even managed to escape unscathed. Such strength is extraordinary. Now that I've said it, you should understand, right? Sorry for taking such a long leave. These 3 days of kowtowing were really tiring. Haha. Chapter 2338. Mo Tianji had a faint smile on his face as everyone was dumbstruck and flabbergasted. I will guide the public opinion. Oh right, the Heavenly Secret Intelligence Department that played a huge role in this battle was also founded by you, Xiedan Qiong. There is only one reason for it, and that is to kill the demons. And, the initiator of all of this is you, Xiedan Qiong. The foundation, achievements, and contributions of our brothers are all yours. Don't have any psychological burden. In summary, it can be said that you, Xiedan Qiong, saved the entire ink cloud sky and countless people in the heavenly imperial court with your strength alone. Mo Tianji smiled faintly. In this way, if you are not the heavenly emperor, who will be? Who can compare to your extraordinary achievements? Without Xiedan Qiong, there would be no ink cloud sky. Without Xiedan Qiong, ink cloud sky might have become another purple cloud sky. If Xiedan Qiong, who has great foresight, outstanding cultivation, and great talent, doesn't become the next heavenly emperor of ink cloud sky, who else can bear it? So, you, Xiedan Qiong, are undeniably responsible. Mo Tianji's last sentence made everyone completely dumbfounded. What in the world was this? Why did Mo Tianji's explanation sound so logical and logical? How did it fit perfectly? In the process of the brothers' eyes getting bigger and bigger, Mo Tianji actually arranged a huge achievement for Xiedan Qiong that was enough to shock the past and present, enough to leave his name in the annals of history, enough to cover the sky and cover the earth. Even Chu Yang was shocked from the bottom of his heart at this moment. Fuck, how can this be? What the fuck? Isn't this too much? Xiedan Qiong stared and said stutteringly, although it seems that the truth can be said that the brothers and I are on the same level, and the contribution can be considered as mine, but, this seems to be not enough, not open enough, not enough, a little guilty. Mo Tianji stared and said, what is open and above board? The winner is the king, and the winner is open and above board. What is guilty? Don't tell me that you still need us brothers to do something for you. The truth is that you saved billions of Mo Yuntian's citizens. Don't tell me you still feel guilty towards them. Alright, let's not talk about this anymore. Xiedan Qiong, this is related to the success or failure of the entire heavenly imperial court in fighting against the heavenly demon. Why do you still shrink back? Xiedan Qiong heaved a sigh. His facial expression became particularly dignified. Our brothers have already helped you as much as we can. The rest is your responsibility, and you have to shoulder it. Tianji's words were right, you have to shoulder it. Chu Yang said softly, but right now, there's still one more problem, and it seems to be the biggest problem. That is the recognition of the Saint Monarch. This is not a problem at all. Mo Tianji sneered, the entire Heaven Imperial Court should know one thing by now. That is, Saint Monarch was deceived by the heavenly devil. He had once faced the entire Moyun heaven and testified that Yuan Tianjie wasn't a heavenly devil. He even denounced the great hero Mu Kanglan as a traitor. However, the truth was that Xiedan Qiong had uncovered the true face of the heavenly devil and removed a great hidden worry for the heavenly imperial court. I've already ordered for this news to be spread throughout the entire Heaven Imperial Court. Mo Tianji's face was cold. If the Saint Monarch rejects Xiedan Qiong's application to be the heavenly emperor of Moyun Heaven, then I'm completely confident that within a few days, the entire Heaven Imperial Court will be filled with doubts about the Saint Monarch. The Saint Monarch is the #1 person in the Heaven Imperial Court. His cultivation is unfathomable. Why was he deceived by the Heavenly Devil for so long? He was even willing to testify for the Heavenly Devil. What is the reason for this? What is the reason? He testified that Yuan Tianjie wasn't a Heavenly Devil in front of everyone, but the truth was a resounding slap to his face. Then, is the Saint Monarch's heart so natural? He was wrong, but he still didn't let the Demon Slayer hero be the Heavenly Emperor. What is the meaning of this? Is he angry out of humiliation? By extension, was the Saint Monarch also deceived in the purple cloud heavens back then? How do we calculate? How many years has the Saint Monarch been deceived? How many times? The final conclusion, is the Saint Monarch also a Heavenly Devil? Otherwise, why would he be like this? Mo Tianji smiled sinisterly. He was calm as he threw out a series of trump cards that he had prepared. Everyone who heard it felt their hair stand on end. They were dumbfounded and broke out in cold sweat. Even Chu Yang wiped away his cold sweat. Mo Tianji was really too scary. He could see through people's hearts, manipulate people's hearts, control people's hearts, and do as he please. Although he could think of these methods, he would never be able to prepare all the backup plans in advance like Mo Tianji. At best, he could only react to each move as it came. However, Mo Tianji had already thought of a countermeasure from the very beginning. This was what was truly frightening about it. In view of this, the Saint Monarch is also a smart person. I believe that he won't disagree. Even if it's him, he also doesn't want to face the doubts of everyone in the world. Mo Tianji said lightly, I guess. Not only will the Saint Monarch not stop it, he will also praise and reward Xiedan Qiong greatly. Then, he will logically let Xiedan Qiong become the Heavenly Emperor of Ink Cloud. But, it's hard to say how he will deal with you in the future and how he will restrict you. I haven't thought that far yet. Because that Lord Saint Monarch will definitely still feel uncomfortable in his heart. In this matter, it's equivalent to him being coerced and forced into helplessness. Mo Tianji smiled. I'm afraid that since the Saint Monarch ruled the Heavenly Imperial Court for millions of years, this is the first time, right? Jiu Du Xing smiled bitterly. I always felt that the Saint Monarch wasn't very enthusiastic about the heavenly demons. But if he continues to be so, with you, Mo Tianji, in the future, I'm afraid that his helplessness will only increase. Everyone laughed. But Chu Yang and Mo Tianji didn't laugh. After a long time, the two looked at each other and sighed softly. The two of them definitely didn't want such a situation to happen again in their hearts. With Mo Yuntian this time, it was enough. It was already too much. If such an unforeseen event happened in other worlds, then, there would be no chance of winning the war against the heavenly demons in the future. As the #1 person in the Heavenly Imperial Court, if the Saint Monarch really, the two of them forced themselves to stop thinking about it. They didn't want to think about the accident that obviously didn't have a big chance but could really happen. The army stretched for hundreds of miles and advanced towards the imperial capital. Along the way, countless people lined the streets to welcome them. Banners fluttered in the wind and voices of gratitude filled the ears. Many people were in tears and deeply apologized to Mu Kanglan. Previously, they had misunderstood Mu Kanglan. Now that they knew the truth of the matter, they were extremely ashamed of their actions in the past and blamed themselves to the extreme. As for when Xiedan Qiong appeared, each and every one of them kowtowed as if they had seen a living deity. Their gratitude was indescribable. Under Mo Tianji's unbridled and deliberate publicity, and with the cooperation of Mu Kanglan and the others, the name Xiedan Qiong had become the representative of Mo Yuntian's savior. As long as one heard Xiedan Qiong's name, they would involuntarily feel reverence for him. Think about it, Xiedan Qiong was far-sighted and discerning. When no one noticed anything strange, he recognized Yuan Tianjie's true colors. Then, under the enormous pressure of the entire world, he didn't hesitate to sully himself and become an outlaw to establish the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Then, with the initial few hundred people, he began to call for help and began to prepare for the slaughter of the heavenly demons. Along the way, Endless bitterness was a small matter. Every day, he had to go through several battles of blood and fire. He struggled to survive in the face of death. Fortunately, the heavens protected him and he persevered all the way. Until the end, when he personally slaughtered the heavenly demons, Xie Danqiong's experience could really be said to be praiseworthy and his name would be passed down through the ages. In particular, there were many heart-wrenching rumors about the past. Xie Danqiong often fell to his feet and sighed for Mo Yuntian's suffering. He didn't sleep and cried bitterly. Moreover, he once said, the pitiful people of Mo Yuntian were poisoned by the heavenly demons. I, Xie Danqiong, am ashamed to face the heavens and earth. Such touching words. Cough cough. When Xie Danqiong himself heard these words, he couldn't help but have goosebumps all over his body. For a moment, his hair stood on end. This. Did I say this? Did I really say this? But no matter what, the current Xie Danqiong was not only a hero in Mo Yuntian, but also the savior of this world. Not only that, he was a legend of a generation, a legend of a generation, a myth, a far-sighted and benevolent person with lofty ideals who cared about the world. A man with an open mind, bright conduct, far-sighted, and worked his heart out for the people of Mo Yuntian. He was willing to die 10,000 deaths. A saint lord of a generation. Almost every family spontaneously and consciously worshipped Xie Danqiong's longevity tablet. If you don't support such a hero, who else do you want to support? What? You actually oppose Xie Danqiong? Motherfucker, haven't you been fooled enough by the heavenly demons? Come, I'll compete with you and teach you an ungrateful person a lesson. In a very short period of time, the people of Mo Yuntian were united in their hearts. So much so that along the way, Xie Danqiong's army walked through a sea of people, mountains of flowers, lakes of wine and forests of meat. They cheered and supported along the way. So much so that the army walked very slowly. Under Mo Tianji's deliberate arrangement, Xie Danqiong would appear every once in a while, riding a tall horse. With a warm smile, he would greet the people of Mo Yuntian enthusiastically. Thank you everyone. You all have worked hard too. It's not easy for you all. In the future, after suffering, happiness will come. Everyone will live a peaceful and happy life. Thank you everyone. I, Xie Danqiong, am sincerely grateful. Everyone, go back. Ayo, this uncle, slow down. You're old, take care of your body. Oh, this big sister, don't push forward with your child. Everyone, make way, make way. Haha, this lady, I already have a wife. You want to be a concubine? That's not suitable, really not suitable. Cough cough cough. Cough cough. This big brother, I'm not interested in men, really not interested. Xie Danqiong plunged into the bed, covered his face and groaned, Mo Tianji. You bastard, you want to kill me. Thank you everyone. Thank you for your understanding. In these few days, no one questioned or cursed me. I'm very satisfied. Chapter 2339. Everyone burst into laughter upon seeing this. Under Mo Tianji's deliberate manipulation, design and coercion, Xie Danqiong had to appear personally. In just a few days, Xie Danqiong was already suffering unspeakably. That handsome face was almost stiff from smiling. But he still had to appear and laugh. It was simply selling his smile. No, it was even more miserable than selling his smile. The road of tragedy was indescribable. He was truly physically and mentally exhausted. He felt even more tired than the battle with Yuan Tianjie previously. But along the way, Xie Danqiong's image of being close to the people was undoubtedly deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Especially Xie Danqiong's handsome appearance, refined manner of speech, proper manners, natural and unrestrained, but with an unattainable majesty. This is the real heir of a king. Someone sighed. This is the real ruler descending to the world. Someone sighed. Xie Danqiong is too handsome. If I can be his concubine, I will be satisfied. A large number of love-struck women raised their arms and shouted. Xie Danqiong is too handsome. I love him too. If I can spend a night with him, I will have no regrets in this life. A few wretched men said. Not knowing when, the crowd began to have similar voices. What do you think? Let Xie Danqiong be our heavenly emperor of Moyun Sky. Yes. If someone opposes our hero, what should we do? Those who dare to oppose are those with ulterior motives. Is there any need to say what we should do? Kill him. Kill him. Firmly support Xie Danqiong. Someone began to shout slogans. Firmly support Xie Danqiong. Everyone echoed. Long live Emperor Qianghua. Long live Emperor Qianghua. The voices grew louder and louder. Xie Danqiong had to come forward many times to thank and decline. How can I be the heavenly emperor of heaven? This can't be done. My original intention was only to eradicate the heavenly demon, so that the people of Moyun Sky would no longer be deceived by it and live a good life without any hidden dangers. I actually didn't do anything, just some small things. When he said this sentence that Mo Tianji taught him, Xie Danqiong felt that he was as hypocritical as a pile of shit. If these were small things, then what big things? However, the cheers of the crowd grew even louder, and their support grew even stronger. There were even people who burst into tears. If Xie Danqiong doesn't become the celestial emperor, I'll go and die. Boo-hoo. What a good person. Only such a selfless person who serves the people deserves to be the heavenly monarch of the dark cloud heaven. The Yuan Tianjie of the past was a pile of shit. We firmly support Xie Danqiong. Xie Danqiong is the celestial emperor. Ao. Unknowingly, such cries had already engulfed the entire ink cloud sky. Countless people began to move towards the imperial capital. They were like the waves of the sea, coming endlessly. They were unstoppable. It wasn't a very long journey, but it took them a full 3 months to return to the imperial capital. In these 3 months, the cultivation of each of the brothers had increased by a large margin. Every day, they cultivated diligently. With the 2 cold-faced supervisors, Jiyu Duxing and Dong Wushong, as well as the support of Chu Yang's heavenly treasures, everyone cultivated as if their lives depended on it. Almost all of them had reached the critical point of breaking through. Only Xie Danqiong's cultivation didn't improve at all. He was still in the same place, and even regressed a little. But Xie Danqiong's aura was also changing and transforming day by day. Under the strong support of more than 80% of the people in Ink Cloud Sky, Xie Danqiong, who was imperceptibly influenced, gradually gained the demeanor of a king. No matter whether Xie Danqiong was willing or not, as long as he reached this position and this height, that strange aura of a superior naturally appeared on Xie Danqiong's body. There was no way to refuse. The Japanese-style imperial capital was already packed with people. Even the vast imperial palace had already been built when Xie Danqiong was on the road. All the experts in the imperial capital worked together, and a small part of it was already built. Heart Imperial Palace was on the original site of Yuan Tianjie's Imperial Palace. Jasper Flower Imperial Palace. Everyone in Ink Cloud Sky, regardless of whether it was the officials or the people, all of them gathered to write a petition, requesting that Xie Danqiong be the new celestial emperor of Ink Cloud Sky. The petition letter was sent to the extreme heaven saint at lightning speed. On that day, the extreme heaven was covered with dark clouds. Boundless haze covered the entire clear sky. The sound of thunder was faint, as if a rainstorm was coming. It was as if a kind of speechless anger of the heavens had shrouded the entire heavenly imperial court. Everyone was trembling with fear. They didn't understand what was going on at all. Only a few people who knew the inside story knew that His Majesty the Saint couldn't accept Xie Danqiong's action of acting first and reporting later. His Majesty the Saint couldn't accept it, but he still had to accept it. His Majesty the Saint definitely didn't feel good. He was probably already furious. Something big was going to happen in the entire heavenly imperial court. However, what went beyond the expectations of these discerning people was that His Majesty the Saint didn't make any objection to this petition. At the very least, on the surface, he seemed to be very happy. He very happily approved Xie Danqiong's application to take over as Celestial Emperor of Ink Cloud Sky. He even said that on the day of Great Emperor Qionghua's ascension ceremony, he would personally preside over and congratulate her. In addition, he also very generously admitted his previous negligence. "I'm sincerely ashamed. In these long millions of years, I actually didn't completely see through Yuan Tianjie's true identity and origin. I was deceived by his tricks. Thanks to great Emperor Chenghua's painstaking efforts, upholding her original intentions, she saw through the true face of the heavenly demon. She even unified all the forces and worked together to eliminate the heavenly demon. It's really commendable. This matter has also sounded the alarm for me. These millions of years of peace really made me slack off. Apart from a few sentences of criticism and sighing with emotion, the rest of the article was full of heartfelt praise for Xie Danqiong. Ink Cloud Sky's cheers were thunderous. It was also because of His Majesty the Saint's words that Xie Danqiong's title of Great Emperor Chonghua spread like wildfire. In a few days, it had already resounded throughout the world. Great Emperor Chonghua. Under the unanimous strong request of his subordinates, Xie Danqiong could only reluctantly go with the flow and let nature take its course. Naturally, Ink Cloud Sky's imperial palace was officially renamed as Great Emperor Palace. His imperial title was also naturally named as Great Emperor Chonghua. The official meeting place was named as Great Emperor Chonghua Palace. And Ink Cloud Sky's imperial capital was officially named as Great Emperor Chonghua City. In a moment, the entire Ink Cloud Sky was filled with Great Emperor Chonghua. It was really Great Emperor Chonghua, Great Emperor Chonghua. It was worthy of its name. There was a rumor in the martial world, when Great Emperor Chonghua makes a move, Great Emperor Chonghua fills the imperial capital with Great Emperor Chonghua. This was used to describe Xie Danqiong's superb cultivation. Gradually, Xie Danqiong's cultivation had already become the #1 person in Ink Cloud Sky. Great Emperor Chonghua, Great Emperor Chonghua, Great Emperor Chonghua, Great Emperor Chonghua. Great Emperor Chonghua fully deserved to be called the #1 expert of Ink Cloud Sky, Great Emperor Chonghua. The moment Mo Tianji found out about this result, he fiercely smashed his cup on the ground. His viburnum flowers will never be defeated, and will never decline. This was one of the few times Mo Tianji lost his composure. What #1 expert? Saint, do you think I don't know what you want to do? Do you think I, Mo Tianji, really have any scruples about you? If you anger me, don't even think about being the saint for long, Mo Tianji said fiercely. When he said this, only Chu Yang was beside him. And only Chu Yang truly understood Mo Tianji. He truly knew how furious Mo Tianji was at this moment. But, no matter how furious Mo Tianji was, in a moment, the entire Ink Cloud Sky became a sea of joy. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when the saint finally approved Xie Danqiong to take over as the Heavenly Emperor. Then, they were extremely grateful to the saint. His Majesty the Saint is indeed a great person. Thus, everyone was preparing for the Great Emperor Chonghua's ascension ceremony. When the time came, the whole world would celebrate and be filled with joy. Regardless of whether it was in the city, the countryside, or the mountains, as long as there were people there, they would treat the ascension of Great Emperor Chonghua as the #1 joyous event. A surge of power of destiny and power of faith that was hard to see with the naked eye quietly formed and grew stronger. Under Mu Kanglan's suggestion, Xie Danqiong formed a new 7 Stars Guard. Under Chu Yang's persuasion, Crazy Book and Painting King became the new leaders of Xie Danqiong's 7 Stars Guard with extremely complicated feelings. It was still the same position, and the same place to guard, but they would never see their good brothers who had cultivated together for millions of years. Originally, they thought that if they were lucky enough to perish together with Yuan Tianji, they would be able to reunite with their brothers who had left the world. However, the result was that Chu Yang and Tribulation worked together to kill Yuan Tianji. Although the two of them also contributed a lot in the process of killing the demon, it was Chu Yang and Tribulation who made the fatal blow in the end. A real man was happy to repay kindness and revenge. Now that the enmity was settled, the kindness had not been repaid. This kindness did not only belong to the two of them but also to all of their brothers. How could they not repay it? In view of this, Calligraphy and Painting King had to let go of their thoughts and become the 7 Stars Guard again to guard this world. When they sat at the core of the Great Destiny Formation again, where Big Brother and Second Brother originally sat, The two of them were inexplicably emotional, and tears streamed down their faces. Big brother, second brother, brothers, can you feel it? We miss you so much. We really miss you so much. The other 5 guards were carefully selected from the high-level peak saints. In just half a day, they were all settled. In selecting the 7 stars guard, strength was not the most important thing. The most important thing was sincerity and loyalty. But now that everyone was united, there were very few people who deceived them. Seeing that a new destiny nebula was formed in the sky above Mo Yuntian, Mo Tianji frowned tightly. What's wrong? Is there something wrong? Chu Yang asked softly. Sorry, I went out with my wife in the afternoon to do something, so the update is a bit late. Also, today is little sister Ling Piaoping's birthday. Let us wish her a happy birthday. Another secret, little sister Piaoping is a great beauty who is loved by everyone. And, she just graduated from university and doesn't have a boyfriend. Chapter 2340. Well, I do feel that something is wrong. The current situation is good, and the luck can gather quickly. This is a logical thing, and it's also within my expectations. But, the gathering of the luck nebula is too much. Xie Danqiong alone can't use such a large amount of luck power. At least 80% of it has mysteriously disappeared after gathering. The situation of this big formation is not normal, very abnormal. I need to go and take a look, and study it carefully. I'm afraid that even Yuan Tianjie doesn't know about this. Mo Tianji cautiously told Chu Yang about his observations. Chu Yang couldn't help but be shocked. There was a change. After Mo Tianji's careful study, he slightly changed the 7 stars luck formation. Then, he walked out with Chu Yang with a serious face. After Mo Tianji changed part of the operation of the formation, Xu Kuang and Painting King, who had lived here for a long time, clearly felt that their feelings were completely different. Originally, he and his brothers had used their own cultivation to ensure the normal operation of the formation, and the situation just now was the same. In other words, the 7 Stars Protector was one of the driving forces that ensured the permanent operation of the Great Providence Formation, and the Great Providence Formation would not be of any help to him. This was because it had always been like this. Old 7 Stars Protectors like Shuhua did not find it strange, and new 7 Stars Protectors also thought that this was their responsibility. Since they had enjoyed the honor of being a 7 Stars Protector, how could they not do their best to maintain it? But now, Xu Kuang and Painting King clearly felt the difference. When they used their cultivation to ensure the normal operation of the Great Nebula Formation, the Great Nebula Formation was also providing them with reverse energy. Moreover, it was more than what they used, and it was purer. Originally, the protective formation was just a simple job, and it was completely free work. But now, the protective formation had a rich reward, or it could be said that it was an excellent cultivation environment. Regarding this change, the two were inexplicably shocked, but also inexplicably excited. Something's very wrong. After Mo Tianji walked out, he said in a low voice, if the other Heavenly Empress Providence formations are also like this, then, at least 80% of the power of Providence derived from the people's faith would have been inexplicably wasted or disappeared to some unknown place. Chu Yang was speechless. 80% of 1,000,000 years of Providence. What kind of power was that? Moreover, the wording of that imperial edict of the Saint Monarch was too beautiful. Mo Tianji tightly knitted his brows, it basically blocked all of our moves. If Xie Danqiong were to become the Heavenly Emperor, the situation would change with the passage of time, and all of our current arrangements would be completely useless at that time. The Saint Monarch's move was very wonderful. Mo Tianji had already immersed himself in thinking about this matter for several days. Right now, the crux of the matter is the Great Nebula Array. I need to take a look at the other Heavenly Emperor's Great Nebula Arrays, as well as the Saint's Great Nebula Arrays, before I can make a final conclusion. However, the biggest problem now is Xie Danqiong's ascension ceremony. Mo Tianji furrowed his brows. There was a fierce look in his eyes. It was as if he had seen an old hen pouncing on its chicks. He said word by word, I have a premonition that this coronation ceremony won't be very peaceful. Yes, I also have a similar premonition about this. Chuyang said seriously, the Saint Monarch's attitude is too good. It makes people uneasy. Mo Tianji silently nodded in agreement, and this time, it won't be peaceful. The Saint Monarch will personally take action. It will definitely not be a small matter. Think about it from another perspective. If you wanted to destroy Xiedan Qiong's coronation ceremony this time, and prevent Xiedan Qiong from truly becoming the heavenly emperor of Ink Cloud, what would you do? Chuyang frowned and asked. It's difficult to think about it from another perspective. If it were me, there would be at least thousands of ways to make this coronation ceremony a joke. It would be difficult to arrange a targeted strategy. This is where the real difficulty lies. Mo Tianji's face was even more worried. That's true. But, we still need to have a corresponding countermeasure. So, we can't prepare all the countermeasure plans. But, we can first filter out the most effective ones from your thousands of methods. Then, we can prepare the corresponding countermeasure. Chuyang solemnly said, we should do our best to prepare for a rainy day in case of emergency. Mo Tianji nodded slowly. Dan Qiong is the first among us brothers to ascend to the position of the Heavenly Emperor. It is also the beginning of us brothers to truly gain a foothold in the Heavenly Imperial Court. We must ensure that his coronation ceremony is foolproof. Chuyang said word by word. He seemed to feel that his calamity sword was already impatient to let out a cry. It was a kind of exhilarating atmosphere to welcome the upcoming battle. If there are still problems in our brother's coronation ceremony, then I, Mo Tianji, don't need to show my face anymore. I can't afford to lose this face. Mo Tianji sneered, let's go. Let's discuss this properly. Tell Jiyu Du Xing and the others to get ready. During this period of time, they must continue to strengthen their own cultivation. 3 months later, during the coronation ceremony, I, Mo Tianji, will use the strength of Brother Jie to catch all the people who dare to come and make trouble. Once and for all. Mo Tianji's voice was cold and ruthless. Chuyang's solemn face suddenly relaxed. He even laughed softly. At that time, the Saint Lord will definitely be present. If we completely kill those people in front of the Saint Lord, the Saint Lord's expression will definitely be very pleasant to look at, right? It will definitely be very pleasant to look at. Even if his expression doesn't look good, it won't do. Mo Tianji sneered. Chuyang knew that this time, Mo Tianji was really serious. He really had the intention to kill. The Saint Lord's imperial edict was full of praise, which made Mo Tianji feel the strong murderous intent that shrouded Xiedan Qiong. But because of this, it also thoroughly angered this master of calculation and manipulation. Like Chuyang, Mo Tianji's bottom line was his sister Mo Qingwu, his brothers Chuyang and the others, and his own family. A dragon had a reverse scale. Once touched, it would be angry. Once angry, blood would flow for thousands of miles. This time, the Saint Lord had undoubtedly touched Mo Tianji's reverse scale. This terrifying character, under the terrifying pressure of the Saint Lord, used his brain to its fullest for the first time, and became hysterically furious. This master of calculation and manipulation, who had always been used to hiding behind the scenes and controlling the overall situation, was finally going to reveal his ferocious fangs in the Heaven Imperial Court today. Anyone who dared to invade would definitely be killed by Mo Tianji's mental, physical, and intellectual strength. That would be the common nightmare of all invading enemies. Chuyang absolutely believed in this point. He had never doubted it. The two of them left together and found a place to discuss in detail. Until the next morning, Minister Chu walked out with a pale face and a hint of lingering fear. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. Whenever he thought of the plan that Mo Tianji had formulated, Chuyang couldn't help but feel his hair stand on end. Too ruthless. Too vicious. Especially for those who participated in the discussion, what would happen to those who personally experienced it? Would they be looking forward to it? Or would they be looking forward to it? Chuyang turned around and went straight to Jasper Flower Emperor Palace. But he didn't go to see Xiedan Qiong. Instead, he entered quietly and found the original resting place of Yuan Tianjie. He emitted an unusually large amount of spiritual energy and carefully investigated it bit by bit. Throughout the entire process, Chu Yang was extremely cautious. He didn't alert anyone at all. This was because he wanted to verify something else. Although Yuan Tianjie was dead now and his imperial palace had been destroyed, Chu Yang believed that there was definitely something that hadn't been destroyed yet. Yuan Tianjie left in a hurry. Moreover, he didn't believe that he would fail. So those things should still exist. And what Chu Yang was looking for was exactly those things. Even though he didn't know what he was looking for, Chu Yang believed that once he found something, it would definitely be the thing he was looking for, whether it was a piece of paper, a piece of news, or some remnants of evidence. Chu Yang used his movement technique and increased his speed to the extreme. Like a wisp of smoke, he flew past the imperial palace. Although the incomplete palace was still heavily guarded, it was not a palace that had already been completed and people had moved in. What's more, Chu Yang's current cultivation could be considered to be at the peak even in the whole world. Except for super experts like Jun Iho and the 7 Stars Guards, he really didn't need to be afraid of anyone else. Rushing through the imperial palace at this moment was just a small demonstration of his skill. It was really like entering a no-man's land. The former site of Yuan Tianjie's imperial palace was now an ownerless object. There was no one to protect it at all. It was relatively easier for Chu Yang to investigate. Using his powerful spiritual power to search bit by bit, Chu Yang finally found an unusual place after more than an hour. Below the original location of Yuan Tianji's palace, at least 1,000 feet below the ground, there was a very strange place. Chu Yang couldn't help but frown at this discovery. Now that he was building a new palace above it, if he dug it up, it wouldn't be an auspicious thing. This was related to his brother's great cause. Even if Chu Yang didn't care much about this kind of thing, he still didn't want to commit this kind of taboo. After a moment of consideration, he summoned the divine spirit of the calamity and gave it instructions. The divine spirit of the calamity nodded repeatedly and left as instructed. Chu Yang waited quietly here. He couldn't help but think of the sword spirit. He actually missed the sword spirit a little. The help that the divine spirit of the calamity and the sword spirit gave him was similar. In terms of cultivation, the divine spirit of the calamity surpassed the sword spirit by too much. But when he was with the divine spirit of the calamity, he always had this kind of feeling that he was a subordinate. He would only carry out his orders. He would never or dare to joke with him. Chapter 2341. That was a very complicated but warm feeling. He could laugh and scold angrily. He could lecture with stern words. He could be impudent. The sword spirit had witnessed Chu Yang's growth. He had followed him from the lower 3 heavens. So, the two of them were almost like one. In fact, this almost as if they were one went beyond the meaning of this sentence. When facing an enemy, Chu Yang could completely rest assured and let the sword spirit take full control of his body without any ill feelings. But if it was the tribulation divine soul, Chu Yang couldn't trust him this much. Although a similar situation hadn't happened yet, if it did, Chu Yang would still hesitate and find it difficult to make a choice no matter how critical the situation was. After the last farewell, the sword spirit disappeared without a trace and there was no news of him. Chu Yang was actually very worried. But he understood the sword spirit and his feelings. All along, the sword spirit had been a teacher and a friend to Chu Yang, a guide. But with Chu Yang's amazing progress, the sword spirit who had been a great help was gradually left behind, and the gap was getting wider and wider. Whether it was Chu Yang himself or Chu Yang's subordinates, they all had higher cultivations than the sword spirit. This situation made the sword spirit feel very disappointed. He even felt that if he continued to follow Chu Yang, not only would he not be of help, but he would also become a burden. This was undoubtedly an unbearable thing for the sword spirit, so he chose to leave and find his own opportunities to break through. What the sword spirit wanted was to return in a powerful manner one day. Then, he would fight alongside Chu Yang and rise again. Chu Yang understood this very well. So he didn't stop him from staying, although he was very reluctant. But he could only silently bless the sword spirit and silently look forward to his early return. The tribulation divine soul quietly sneaked into the ground and carefully searched for the special place Chu Yang mentioned. Yuan Tianjie definitely couldn't go in every day with mud all over his body. So, there must be a secret passage. And what the tribulation divine soul had to do now was to find this secret passage. This wasn't difficult at all for the tribulation divine soul, it was a piece of cake. It didn't take long before the tribulation spirit turned into a cloud of smoke and appeared in front of Chu Yang. Little ancestor, I've found the passage. However, the entrance was covered by the previous big explosion. I've already cleared it out. You only need to lift up the stone slab that is about 10 feet wide. Then, you'll be able to see the hidden entrance about 10 feet deep. Chu Yang nodded and praised, well done. The tribulation soul instantly beamed with joy when it heard this, and it seemed to be in high spirits, complacent. According to the guidance of the tribulation spirit, Chu Yang first used his primordial qi to press down on this area, so that the originally scattered stones would once again condense into one whole body due to this pressure. Then, he swung his sword down and lifted it up with one hand. The stone slab that weighed tens of thousands of pounds was completely lifted up. As Chu Yang's body fell into this hole, the stone slab above once again fell down silently. Chu Yang held the boulder with one hand, and then his body fell down gracefully. When his body entered the hidden entrance, the boulder fell down just in time. It didn't make a single sound, and it didn't make a single sound. This was a pitch-black passage where one couldn't even see one's own fingers. Yuan Tianjie didn't even place anything like luminous pearls to illuminate the passage. Of course, with Chu Yang's cultivation level, even if the environment was a little darker, Chu Yang's vision would be clear. It wouldn't affect his vision at all. He went straight down, and even made a few turns along the way. According to Chu Yang's estimation, he had already reached a depth of 3,000 feet, but he didn't feel any dampness at all. This situation obviously wasn't something that could be done together. If this happened in Shui Leihan's Eastern Royal Heavens, it would probably be pardonable. Because the Eastern Royal Heavens terrain was higher, and there were many dry areas. But Ink Cloud Heaven was an area with abundant water sources. In some places, one only needed to dig 5 feet deep, and water would gush out. But here, it was already 3,000 feet deep, and yet it was still so dry. That was very strange. Like a whirlwind, Chu Yang went in. After descending another 2,000 feet, he suddenly stopped. Because there was no more path ahead. There were thick stone walls on both sides, but in front of him was a patch of soil mixed with heavy rocks. As far as he could see, there was no more passage at all. Chu Yang stood still and was silent for a while. Since he had spent so much effort to create such a strange secret passage, how could there be no way ahead? There must be a problem. Chu Yang's huge divine sense spread out again, but he unexpectedly found that his divine sense was completely useless in this place. He couldn't detect anything. Tribulation's divine sense came out and tried, but the result was the same. Chu Yang pondered for a while. Suddenly, he pulled out the tribulation sword and slashed at the soil wall in front of him. Poof, poof, poof. Large chunks of soil fell off with the sword. How sharp was the tribulation sword? Using it to dig up soil and rocks was like using a sledgehammer to crack open a hole. But Chu Yang didn't dare to have such extravagant hopes. Since this place was related to the secret of Heaven Limit, it was destined not to be simple. Indeed, the tribulation sword had only gone 10 feet deep when Chu Yang felt that something was wrong in front of him. It was as if there was an extremely viscous force in front of him that was preventing the Calamity Sword from moving forward. Even with the sharpness of the Calamity Sword, it still had an awkward feeling of being unable to use its power. Chu Yang exerted his divine power. Vigorous elemental energy poured into the tribulation sword. He fiercely stabbed the sword, and it was like a hot knife through butter. It was unstoppable, and it forcibly broke through the viscous force. Unexpectedly, just as it broke through, a black fog suddenly emerged from the soil wall in front of him. And the soil that had been cut off by the tribulation sword on the ground actually returned to its original position at this time. In the next moment, the original soil wall slowly transformed into an ink-colored door. The door was tightly shut. Above it, the black fog slowly lingered for a while. Finally, a strange pattern appeared. It vaguely resembled a human face. There was a pair of living black eyes on it, which seemed to be staring at Chu Yang. Chu Yang instinctively felt that this pair of eyes seemed to be somewhat expectant. It seemed to be hoping that he could open the door earlier, or asking if he could open this door. The divine soul of calamity floated closer and observed carefully. Then, he said, "Little ancestor, I'm afraid this is the legendary gate of the heavenly devil. It is said that once this gate is opened, no one can enter except for the heavenly devil who set this place up. Even if there is a super expert who forcibly breaks through the gate with his tyrannical strength, everything inside will be destroyed the moment the gate is broken through. It will never be the same again. Little ancestor, don't underestimate him. If you act rashly, I'm afraid." Chu Yang nodded and said lightly, "I know. I have a way to deal with it." As he spoke, he waved his hand, and the tribulation sword left his hand again. This time, the sword was surrounded by green aura. The dense green aura gradually turned into a small vortex, and it fiercely pierced into the heavenly demon gate. It made a crisp sword sound. "Don't forcefully break it. Even if you succeed, you will only destroy everything." Before the tribulation spirit finished speaking, he saw that the tribulation sword had already pierced into the gate. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh. He thought to himself, "This little ancestor has always been calm, but why is he so impulsive this time? I clearly explained the consequences of forcefully breaking through, but he still chose to do so. This is really a blunder." However, the heavenly demon gate, which should have been completely annihilated after being forcefully broken through by external forces, did not have any reaction. He couldn't help but feel a little strange and focused on it. Could it be that this little ancestor's attack was too weak and couldn't cause any damage to the heavenly demon gate, so it didn't collapse? When he took a closer look, he couldn't help but turn pale with fright. The result was actually like this. The green aura on the tribulation sword flowed as if it was alive. The heavenly demon chi on the heavenly demon gate gradually gathered toward the tribulation sword like rivers flowing into the sea. The tribulation sword was like an ocean that could hold all the water in the world. It didn't reject anything that came, and all the heavenly demon chi was transformed into the green aura of the sword and quietly absorbed into the sword. Its power was so profound that it was unimaginable. Gradually, the heavenly demon gate on the wall became much dimmer. The tribulation spirit looked at the shocking effect caused by the tribulation sword and couldn't help but open his mouth wide, unable to close it. He had always known that this little ancestor's sword was the best divine weapon in the world, but he didn't expect it to have such a terrifying devouring power. It would be fine if it devoured other things, but it could even devour such dense heavenly demon chi bit by bit. Furthermore, it was using the method of devouring all the heavenly demon chi to dissolve the heavenly demon gate. The idea was undoubtedly brilliant. The tribulation spirit was greatly surprised by the change in front of him. After the tribulation sword's devouring power dissolved the first part of the heavenly demon chi, the devouring power became even stronger. In the end, it formed a huge vortex that could be seen with the naked eye. He swallowed all the heavenly devil chi that formed the heavenly devil gate and sucked it in. Calamity's soul got a little closer, and he actually felt that his cultivation was being affected. He was faintly moving towards the sword. That feeling was actually similar to when he was manipulated by that person on that day. Even though there was still a considerable gap between them, that feeling was very similar. It was an ultimate targeted might that could completely obliterate his body and soul, and it was a complete counter to him. As soon as he thought up to here, the Calamity's soul couldn't help but be terrified, and he let out a strange cry before retreating 30 m back. Only then was he able to completely escape this devouring force. For a time, his hair stood on end, and there was still a lingering fear in his heart. Chapter 2342. The soul secretly swore, "Damn it, I was almost caught in the crossfire. I'll never go near this magical sword again." The system had cultivated for such a long time to reach its current level. If it was inexplicably swallowed by this strange sword, it wouldn't even be able to find a place to cry. It would really be too tragic. After a short while, Chu Yang shook his wrist, and the tribulation sword flew back into Chu Yang's palm with a clear cry. The gate of heavenly demons in front of him finally opened to the sides silently, following which, a soft and misty light slowly seeped out. Looking around, all he could see was a dazzling light in front of him. Along the way, it was unknown how many night luminescent pearls were embedded in it. Every one of them was as big as a child's fist, and every one of them was a rare treasure. Seeing such a rare treasure, Chu Yang naturally didn't stand on ceremony. He kept all the luminous pearls he passed into the tribulation space. It would be a waste not to take advantage of such a fortune. Moreover, Chu Yang knew that these luminous pearls didn't look very special, but the light they emitted had a faint purple-blue halo. This meant that these luminous pearls were all produced in the deep sea. These luminous pearls weren't ordinary clam pearls or eastern pearls. They were extremely rare crab pearls. Illumination was only one of their functions. The biggest function of these pearls was to assist in cultivation. Yuan Tianjie placed so many crab pearls here to form a special array, which made it easy to absorb a large amount of the world's essence energy. But Chu Yang wouldn't be as wasteful as Yuan Tianjie, because Yuan Tianjie was ultimately a heavenly demon and couldn't directly absorb the world's essence energy. But Chu Yang was a genuine human. He could completely convert all these luminous pearls into pure cultivation. It would allow his skills to rise to the next level. He had just opened the gate of heavenly demons, and he already had such a harvest. How could Chu Yang not be happy? This was simply a big pie falling from the sky. If Yuan Tianjie didn't get it, and any other human expert got it, these crab pearls would have turned into powder long ago. Yuan Tianjie is really a good person. Even if he's dead, he still has something left for me. Chu Yang sighed as he walked in. There are such good treasures, but you can't use them and can only stare at them helplessly. But, you've left them all to me. I'll gladly accept them. Chu Yang had harvested more than 3,000 crab pearls in this short journey of a few thousand feet. Such a huge number made Chu Yang's scalp go numb even though he was the one directly involved. This was because there were simply too many of them. It had to be known that not every crab could produce such a quantity of crab pearls. Only dragon crabs that lived thousands of meters deep in the ocean could produce such a quantity of crab pearls. As long as it was a dragon crab, it was said that it could fight a flood dragon alone. Most importantly, even dragon crabs only had a possibility of nurturing this kind of crab pearl. Roughly 3,000 dragon crabs would only be able to produce one crab pearl at most. Looking at the 3,000 plus crab pearls here, Yuan Tianjie must have exterminated all the dragon crab clans in the Heaven Imperial Court to be able to obtain so many, right? Sure enough, on one side of the stone wall, there were words carved by Yuan Tianjie. Now, it seemed that Chu Yang could also feel Yuan Tianjie's dissatisfaction. Slaughtering all the 13 seas in the world to obtain 3,100 pearls. The 10,000 crab pearls that I asked for is still far from enough. How can it not make people feel resentful? When anger rises, they will be slaughtered cleanly. Sure enough, Yuan Tianjie had really exterminated all the dragon crab clans. It turned out that the heavenly demon clan was not only the mortal enemy of the human race, but any living creature that could be targeted by them had the possibility of being exterminated. The heavenly demons were actually the common enemy of all living creatures. You're really an idiot. You could have just left some seeds and killed another batch of pearls after a few 100,000 years. Your lifespan is so long, but you're so impatient. Not to mention other things, just the millions of years that you've been in power. As long as you had a little bit of patience, not to mention 10,000, even 100,000 wouldn't be difficult. Heavenly demons are indeed heavenly demons. Chu Yang scolded angrily. What kind of effect could 10,000 crab pearls produce? If there were really 10,000 crab pearls for him to use, Yuan Tianjie could totally set up a 10,000 pearls formation. In one night, He could use the formation to completely absorb the spiritual energy of the crab pearls, doubling his cultivation. But if the quantity was insufficient, then it would be another matter. The 10,000 pearls formation must have 10,000 pearls, not even a single one. It was precisely because of this that Chu Yang was so angry. Yuan Tianjie, you impatient bastard, why didn't you collect enough pearls before letting me take advantage of you? It was also because Chu Yang was filled with anger. In a moment of confusion, he neglected the benefits in front of him. If Yuan Tianjie had really collected enough pearls, he would have used them all up on the same day. How would he be able to take advantage of him? More importantly, it wasn't just that he couldn't take advantage of Yuan Tianjie. If Yuan Tianjie's cultivation had really doubled, perhaps none of the brothers would have survived the battle that day. Even Yuan Tianjie might not have to reveal his identity. The gap was so huge. If Yuan Tianjie's cultivation had doubled again, he could completely be comparable to a Saint Monarch, or even better. Even if a Saint Monarch was the #1 person in the imperial court, and his strength was extraordinary, he still wasn't as strong as Jun Iho. After venting his anger for a while, Chu Yang realized that he was venting his anger out of boredom. He was quite discouraged. He had no choice but to continue walking forward. However, he was immediately stunned when he pushed open another door. What he saw in front of him was an unusually large area. Not to mention that there were at least 8 other doors connected to different places. Just this hall alone was full of splendor and extremely luxurious. Hundreds of huge crab pearls the size of a human head were inlaid all around. In the center, there was also a star jade the size of a fist. That star jade continued to refract tens of thousands of rays of starlight. The moment he walked in, it was as if he had walked into the most brilliant starry sky. Star jade was a special kind of jade formed at the core of a star after countless years. This was a super heavenly treasure that could only be encountered but not sought. It was a top-notch treasure that lived up to its name. No wonder Yuan Tianjie's cultivation progress is so fast. So he has such a good thing as his backing. Chu Yang thought to himself. In the center, there was even a huge cushion formed purely by souls of purple crystal. Obviously, Yuan Tianjie sat here to cultivate. This guy is really a celestial emperor. He's so much more extravagant than I am. Joy appeared on Chu Yang's face. His previous anger had completely disappeared. Because all these things now seemed to already belong to Chu. The things were all here. Chu Yang was not in a hurry to collect them. Instead, he pushed open the other 8 doors one by one. These 8 doors must be the most precious collection of Yuan Tianjie's life, as well as the greatest secret of his life. Even Chu Yang's eyes shone with a dazzling light. Treasures were indeed precious, but they were only things that could be obtained conveniently. What Chu Yang really cared about was whether he could actually find the answer he wanted from here. For example, how did Yuan Tianjie enter the Heaven Imperial Court back then and even reach his current position? Another example, what role did Yuan Tianjie play in the Purple Clouds Heavens incident back then? Mastermind, accomplice, or something else? Another example, what exactly did Yuan Tianjie do for the Heavenly Fiend clan in these million years? This was what Chu Yang was most concerned about right now. The first storeroom was filled with precious materials piled up like a mountain. Every one of them was something that only existed in legends. They could be said to be the best materials. Chu Yang waved his hand and summoned Calamity Sword. He gave an order. Other than leaving some for me to use in forging weapons, the rest are all yours. Devour to your heart's content. Calamity's sword let out a joyful sword cry. It flew over quickly and ate to its heart's content. It seemed that it had not devoured to its heart's content like this for a long time. How could the divine sword not be elated? Chu Yang walked into the second storeroom. As expected, this was the storehouse where Yuan Tianming used to practice martial arts. However, what made Chu Yang disappointed was that although the things inside were also rare treasures, he couldn't use them at all. Because the things inside were all top-grade magic crystals. The Heavenly Fiend crystal was a unique product of the Heavenly Fiend continent. It had a beneficial effect on the demon body. This kind of magic crystal stone was also divided into different grades. The ones that Yuan Tianjie had were all top-grade goods. However, for a human like Chu Yang, they were completely useless. The higher the grade, the more useless they were. Not only were they not beneficial, they were even harmful. Chu Yang sighed. He waved his hand casually and put them into the calamity space. After all, it was shameful to waste them. He would take them out and show them to Tan Tan later. If they were useful to him, then these things would belong to Tan Tan. If even Tan Tan could not use them, then he would have to let Calamity Sword devour them all. Calamity Sword did not care about whether it was magic crystals or purple crystals. The third storeroom was filled with a large number of elixirs. Chu Yang's expression did not change. He waved his hand and put them all into the calamity space. This indifference was not pretentious. With Chu Yang's collection theory, although these elixirs that he obtained from Yuan Tianjie were all top-grade elixirs, compared to the heaven-defying Heaven-Earth Mystery Yellow Fruit and the Nether Hell Fruit, they were really not too great. How could Chu Yang be shocked by these elixirs when he already had them in front of him? Chu Yang did not care about them. However, the 3 elixirs in the calamity space were overjoyed when they saw so many elixirs falling from the sky. One by one, they rushed over with their short legs. They were beaming with joy as they took them back. Then, they planted them into the elixir field one by one. As for the elixirs that had lost their vitality, the elixirs were all absorbed by the elixirs and turned into powder. Previously, Chu Yang had used a large number of elixirs to accelerate the growth of heavy elixirs in order to increase the odds of victory in the battle against the devil. This had made the 3 elixirs very distressed. Now that there were so many elixirs to replenish them, it was naturally a great joy. I was extremely unlucky. In the morning, I was eating with my wife's best friend. That woman was wearing a necklace and happily showing it off. She said that her husband had bought it for her on Women's Day. At that moment, my wife looked at me with resentment in her eyes. It made my hair stand on end. Women's Day? Which day is it? I don't remember at all. What a tragedy. At the same time, I was depressed in my heart. Women have too many festivals. Where are the festivals that belong to men? Valentine's Day, Women's Day, Spring Festival, Lantern Festival, 7th of July, birthdays. I need to buy gifts for all of them. Damn, it's too difficult for men. Just these festivals alone are like a mountain of knives and a sea of fire. If it continues like this, I won't be able to afford to find a wife in the future. So, I made a bold decision. I must have a pair of twin daughters. Damn it, I'll just sit at home and wait for the betrothal gifts in the future. Who is it? Where's the gift? Damn it, you came without a gift. Get out. Big brother, Nan Nan, who gave you the gift? Quickly hand it over. Second brother, hand it over quickly. I'm waiting for you to spend money. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.